Okay. Messing around in OBS and having no idea what I'm doing. Also messing around on Twitch and having no idea what I'm doing. I'll begin the tirade shortly. Let me just figure out how to do chat. I don't know how to chat. How do I chat? Oh, there we go. I still don't. Oh, because there's a stupid. Okay, here we are. See if I can type here. There we go. Okay. Begin the introduction shortly. Let me just bring this up. Like so. Alrighty. I think I'm ready. Okay. So, what I'm doing here today is going over the progress. This is the first video I've made about this, so I've done a lot of progress before this. So we're going to catch up with it right now. I am going to be discussing the game Calamity. This is a tabletop skirmish war game / RPG game / adventure game that I have been working on for quite a while now. I've come to a point where I feel like I can at least start sharing some of it, trying to get some feedback. Right now I've just been doing it on my own. I'm basically writing this game for myself, and I'm ready to see if I can't get some feedback for some people. So this stream's going to be thrown up on YouTube as well, for hopefully I can get some more feedback through the YouTube comments section. But anyways, so I got a little syllabus here I'm going to look at to organize my thoughts. So the game's called Calamity. It's going to have a dark, gritty fantasy theme, or a low fantasy theme, set somewhere in the medieval period, and essentially an apocalypse occurs, and the world has started to end, and you and your band of misfits are going to try to survive in the medieval apocalypse. The tone's going to be dark. There's no elves, dwarves, anything like that. Everybody's human. There will be low magic. It's going to be rare. The player will have access to it, of course. There will be little to no monsters, at least at the beginning. During the course of the campaign, more calamities will occur, because it's essentially the world ending and you're trying to survive it. And as more calamities occur, different types of enemies will be unlocked. So you will eventually be fighting demons, zombies, eldritch horrors, folklore horrors, that kind of stuff. But nothing like orcs and nothing like your typical D&D fantasy monsters. So that's basically the theme and tone of the game. The basic story that I'm hoping to convey with these rules is a survival story. It's you're a survivor of the apocalypse. You're basically trying to get through it. So we're going to go over some basic rules that are going to be used in this game. Let me get some index cards. So we'll go over exacts in a bit, but the main driving factor of the game is going to be the skill check. So this game's going to be a D6 dice pool system, where you have an attribute that'll assign you how many dice. then you either have a skill or you don't have the skill, which will assign you extra dice. And there's some other factors that'll add and subtract dice. You're trying to hit a target number, which is the difficulty. And that's it. So all the skill checks will be written out as, for instance, there's going to be easy, normal, and hard checks, which will be a 4+, a 5+, or a 6+, respectively. Then there'll be the attribute involved with the check. So we'll say intelligence here. And then there'll be whatever the skill you're going to be using. We'll say survival. So skills will be following this pattern. So if I say a norm intelligence survival check, that's what I mean. I mean it's a 5+. You get your intelligence as your base dice, and if you have the survival skill, you get the bonuses. So that's the skill check. That's going to come up pretty much throughout the entire game. It's how pretty much everything's resolved, other than tables, which we'll use a D100 to figure out, to get whatever, an items table or a location table, anything like that. And then the D10 will also be used here and there. So D6s and D10s are all that are needed. Other dice can be helpful, as you've found out in any game you've played. But so there's that. Some other basic rules that will be used is a progress bar. This is kind of similar to D100 Dungeons damage or experience progress, but it works a little different. So as an example, I have a structure in my camp. It's just a campfire kitchen. And there's a progress section. Now this is going to be fully built at the start of the game. We'll get to that later. But as you can see, there's blips. And then these are marked out because they're not part of the structure. These are blips that you have to fill out, essentially, to get the structure working. So in this case, it takes stone, wood, metal, and parts to create the campfire kitchen. And it uses a progress like this, so that way it can take you a couple of turns to finally complete whatever structure you're making. You don't have to all or nothing in one roll. And the same thing will be for the camp. The camp has a progress bar. As you feed it resources and build your camp up, you'll level your camp up and gain additional benefits for that. So that is the progress bar. That'll come up on some things. I just wanted to get that out of. That's a general concept. The game flow is you're going to start by creating your protagonist, which is your main character that kind of represents you. You'll then create any additional characters you'll get in your party. You'll have to create a camp, which is a fairly simple process. You basically roll your starting resources and that kind of thing. You'll create a map, so the game will be played on a hex map. It's sort of a hex crawl game. And then you will generate the first calamity. This is the first apocalypse that happens, that kicks off the game. So again, the flow of the game is you do all that creation, then you take your first campaign turn. A campaign turn will consist of 24 hours worth of actions. All campaign actions cost hours. You spend them as you play, and you take the action. It'll tell you how many hours it takes. Make your skill check, and then resolve the action. During the course of a campaign turn, you can take an adventure action, which will allow you to explore a location. That's when you break out your miniatures and set up your board. That's sort of your mission phase. So instead of it being, you take your before mission stuff, and then you always have a mission every turn. With this one, you don't necessarily have to have a mission every turn. It's probably a good idea to, unless everybody's beat up. But it lets you set the own pace of when you want to break out miniatures. One thing I found when I was playing 5 Leagues from the Borderlands is I always enjoyed the campaign phase a lot. So this game's going to stress heavily on campaign phase. And I liked the idea of being able to take campaign turns and progress the story outside of actually setting up miniatures. So in this game's going to allow you to do that pretty effectively. You get to basically set the pace on when your actual combat's going to occur, with the exception of an encounter roll, which can occur and force you into a battle. But all in all, you'll be able to kind of set the pace of when the battles start. All right, so I talked about the campaign turn. I talked about how the campaign turn can turn into an actual minis battle. Then after you've spent all your hours and used all of your dice pool, which I'll get to that when we actually start, you will then go to an upkeep phase. The upkeep phase will basically go through things like spending food and wood to prevent hunger and exposure. You'll go through any disease or see how diseases are progressing, because there's a few statuses: disease, injury, that kind of stuff. You'll see how those statuses are progressing. You'll see if anybody in your camp will end up leaving or dying. There's a bit of a morale system and a stress system. You'll do that during upkeep. And then, let's see, let me bring out my upkeep sheet here. There's going to be quite a bit of shuffling through papers here as I explain this. But I'll get to the actual first campaign turn, and then it'll probably be a little more streamlined. And then that's basically it for campaign. You're basically spending resources to prevent bad things from happening. And then you're checking to see if the bad things that already happen even worse or continue to happen, from like disease or fatigue. If you don't spend enough hours in your campaign turn resting or retiring for the day, you'll start building up fatigue. So you can spend all 24 hours taking actions, but then you're going to get hit with some fatigue penalties. And so eventually you're going to have to sleep or have to spend that time resting. And then every 7 days, it's going to use the standard calendar. Every 7 days, you'll end up with a calendar upkeep, I call it. That's not a set name. And then basically every Sunday. And then you'll do some other upkeep stuff that's like an additional upkeep. And during that upkeep, your structures will all degrade a pip, and you'll have to fix them. Any injuries could worsen. Your health stat will recover. That's the one that's harder to recover, is your health stat. Food will spoil. Food, fiber, and skins are resources in the game. They'll all spoil. Then there's just the basic chore of living, I call it. That's where your morale is reduced by 1, your stress is increased by 1. You remove a point of luck, which is a resource, and you remove a point of interest, which is a resource. And then you check Calamity, which is kind of the point of the game. As Calamity builds up through actions and other things, you check it at the end of every week, essentially, and if you roll under the current Calamity score, the next apocalypse happens. And there's a whole chart. There's 10 apocalypses that'll happen throughout the course of the normal game, and then once you reach the end of that 10th one, the final apocalypse will happen. It's sort of the end game. It's where basically everything dies. And then you also check for camp raids during that. Oh, and there was also during the regular upkeep, there's the nightmare phase. So during the course of the game, you're going to pick up what I call woes, which is essentially like stress in other games, the mental aspect of the game. And instead of having it act like a wounds, where you resolve it immediately, like during battle, you take wounds and it could knock you out of the game. For woes, you track them. And then during upkeep, I do the nightmare phase. And then during the nightmare phase, you see if those woes have built up enough and will cause you some sort of psychological injury. But that's upkeep. So that's the flow of the game, essentially. You'll make your character, you'll make your companions, you'll set up your camp, you'll figure out what the apocalypse is, the calamity, and then you'll begin taking campaign turns. And during campaign turns, you'll spend your hours on actions and eventually rest up or finish the day, and then have to go through the upkeep. And then every 7 days, there is a calendar upkeep where more things happen. So now I think I'm just going to go ahead and start creating characters and setting up the campaign to give you an idea. Now, as I go over things, I'll do my very best to explain them. And basically teach the game as I go. And hopefully I don't forget things, because I got a lot of this is in my head. I mean, it's all written down, but I've been doing this a lot lately, so I kind of remember what I wrote. But I'll do my best to relay it. All right. So, I have my printouts here in order, hopefully. Close enough. All right, so when you start, we don't need the map right this second. We need the character sheet. I already pre-filled out a few things just to make it easier and quicker. Names and stuff. All right, good enough. So, first thing you do when it's going to be like the first chapter, or the second chapter after the introduction. First thing you're going to do is going to create a character. I am going to use some scrap paper to track what I do, what I get. So this is, so let's go over a character. That's probably a good start. You're going to have attributes. Let's bring the sheet out too. So you're going to have primary attributes. These are what's referenced by all the skill checks. There's going to be the physical attribute, the intellectual attribute, the social, emotional, and technical attributes. Physical is going to cover everything from how fast you are to how strong you are. Intellectual is just your mental capacities. Social is going to be your interaction. There's a fair amount of social interaction that you can do. Not so much on the battlefield, but during the campaign phase. Emotional is just sort of your emotional well-being. It's kind of like the equivalent of your will. And then technical is anything where you create something or a technical skill. Like, for instance, in this game, swordplay is going to have a technical instead of a physical attribute for its attack resolutions, that kind of stuff. So it's anything learned that has a physical or a real-world application. So that's the technical skill. Then we go to our secondary attributes. There is health. So basically health is your hit points, kinda, not really. So the way health works is once health hits 0, that character dies, unless it dies from some other means. And like things like diseases and injury can cause health damage after you've taken the wounds. The wounds are sort of your in-game hit points, but it doesn't, like, if your wounds start at a number, if they hit 0, you don't die, you just roll on an injury roll and see what happens. And then your wounds can go negative even. You can have negative 10 wounds if you're lucky enough. And they just stack up and then making any following damage you take worse. Now remember, this everything in this game is basically subject to change. I had been thinking about taking health out and just going for wounds, but there are some things that I wanted to play off of with having your actual health and the wounds you've taken separate. So we'll see. But for now, that's the way it works. You get hit with an arrow, you end up taking 2 wounds, and you'll deduct whatever wounds you have. And if you ever hit 0 or lower, that's when you start rolling for injuries. Woes works pretty much the same as wounds. But this will be psychological impacts. You dig through a pile of corpses to find some loot, and that's going to deal some woes to you if you're not strong enough. If somebody dies in the camp, somebody else will take woes. And then during the upkeep phase, you see if those woes actually affect any of the characters. Movement is basic. It's the inches you move during a mission. So when we actually break out miniatures, when they take a move action, they'll move a number of inches equal to the movement. I don't currently have anything else for movement other than just inches moved during a battle. And then there's experience points. Experience points are gained, and then you spend them during train actions to gain bumps to your physical attribute or your primary attributes, secondary attributes, and gain skills or mastery in skill. So going back to the skill test, you get the number of dice equal to whatever attribute it is. So say you have a physical 2 and it's a physical test, you start with 2 dice. Then you check the skill. The skill, skills are essentially binary. If you don't have the skill, you get no additional bonus, you just roll your attribute. If you have the skill, you get an additional 2 dice. And then you can further get a mastery in that skill. And if you have mastery in that skill, you'll get an additional dice. So you end up with 3 dice. And you'll also get some sort of special ability or some sort of bonus. I did this in place of a typical like feats or traits. Instead of doing that, I just tied a special ability to every one of the skills in the game. And by gaining mastery in it, you also gain that ability, plus the bonus dice. So that is that. So let's go ahead. I think, is there anything else? Oh, so you have an inventory. You'll have a camp cache where you keep everything that's loose. And then for inventory, you have slots. So you can wear 1 item. You can have 1 armor. You can have 2 ready items, which count as like things like on your belt or in pouches that are available. And then you'll have 3 stowed items. These are items that aren't readily accessible, but you can carry them around. You have your 2 hands, and then I left space on this sheet because you can gain things like backpacks, which instead of taking up a slot will basically give you more slots. You can get things like vests that hold stuff, anything like that. You can kind of figure that out. So that's essentially it. You carry all your items on your person during missions. During the campaign phase, I haven't quite decided if I want characters' equipment to like be only accessible to the character equipped with it, or if during the campaign phase, because it's not really an action-packed, things are happening and it matters who's carrying what. You're taking these long campaign actions that take hours. So I think I'm probably going to go with any items that are equipped to characters are essentially accessible to anyone in the camp. So for instance, things like a wood axe that would help you gather more wood. If it's equipped on my protagonist and one of my henchmen wants to take a wood chopping action, he can essentially gain the benefit of that axe. So I haven't quite figured out how I want to word that yet, but it's basically how I'm going to do it. Oh, statuses as well. This is where characters will track disease, the different types of injuries, and then I left some spaces for whatever else. Basically, the protagonist and the henchman will get the detailed tracking, and then any camp followers, which are kind of like the people who are in your camp that are surviving with you, the basics, if you will. They're not going to track any of that stuff. When they get wounded in a battle, they either die or they're just automatically better. All their stats are 1. Every one of their attributes is going to be 1. Each one will get a single skill assigned to it. And then when they are participating in an action, you can check to see if they have the proper skill. So they won't check for disease. That's kept track of in the camp statuses. So if they are diseased, you'll keep track of it in the status up here. And we'll get to that. This is all going to come into play during the upkeep. But I just wanted to explain statuses. I haven't quite figured out the effects of head, chest, arm, and leg injuries. Disease, you basically can just have the disease once it hits, because the status can go up and down. Once your disease status equals your health, you're going to die. But then you can also bring your disease status down. And again, we'll get into that when I go through all of the different campaign actions. But so basically I've explained pretty much everything. There's an age, and there's an age category. When I originally was designing this game, I wanted to play more into time passing. There is a mechanism in the game to actually make a week go by, and I think maybe a month go by. And then you can kind of track age, and then depending on your age, you'll get a bonus, sort of like old school D&D. Well, I think all D&D really. The older you are, certain stats will change. So that's why that's there. I don't know. And what I've been looking at so far, age doesn't seem to make all that much of a difference beyond the initial starting age. I don't think this game's going to last. I don't think if you played a campaign out fully, you would actually get to your next birthday. You're probably either gonna hit the end stage or die before that. So, all right, enough rambling about that. I've basically explained all the parts of the character. So we're gonna go ahead and just begin. So the first thing you're gonna do when you play the game is you're going to create a character. I'm gonna move this sheet over here and bring a piece of scrap paper over here. This is a simple. Let me rearrange this. All right, I got my my little dice right here. All right, so now we have all the parts figured out of a character. You begin with creating your protagonist. That'll be the first thing you do. You will roll on. Oh, you'll think it's 7 steps in creating a protagonist. 7 steps. First step is Hand of Fate. This is basically you choose any one attribute and you gain +1 in it. And then you can choose any 2 skills and automatically gain them. And then you have 2 points to spend on woes and wounds. All attributes start at 0. Health starts at 6. Wounds and woes start at 0. Movement starts at 6. And then, of course, experience points start at 0. So we're going to start with... We'll make sort of a maybe like a trapper or someone who would do some furring or whatever, trap animals for fur and food. So we'll say that this fella probably has the technical skill or the technical attribute. So he gets +1 in his technical. He'll have the survival skill because that's used for trapping. And it's used for a lot of other things. It's a good early skill to have. And then I got my list of skills here. So I'll go over the list of skills real quick while we're choosing. So there's agility, basically good for movement. I'm not going to go over each one. They're kind of self-explanatory. Because basically it's if there's an action that calls for a skill, and they can intermingle, like all survival actions don't require the tech attribute. You can have an intellectual survival action, you can have a social survival action, you can have an emotional survival action. Whatever it is, you have the attribute and then the skill and then whatever the difficulty is. So the skills are basically self-explanatory. They sound what they'll come up in situations where it would make sense. So there's the agility skill, the apothecary skill, that's kind of like your healing skill. There's the awareness skill, there's the barter skill, there's the crafting skill, there's the charisma, there's creativity, there's endurance, engineering, there's the esoteric, that's one of the magic skills, there's evasion, there's faith, that's another one of the magic skills, there's gravitas, instinct, martial, marksman, morality, resourceful, resilience, speed, strength, survival, will, and empathy. So those are the skills. I think there's like 25 of them. I believe there's 25 of them. More skills may show up. If a skill doesn't come up enough, I might scrap one. But as of right now, I got those 25 skills. So... Alright, so this guy's going to take survival. And as a trapper, I would say... He's not a hunter, so not marksman. Now, I know which skills are going to come up early, and I know resourceful is one of them, but this guy will say endurance. We'll say he spends a lot of time out in the wilderness and has built up his endurance pretty good. Oh, wait a spell. Alright. Endurance, and we'll give him 1 point each, wounds and woes. +1 wound, +1 woe. Alright. So that's the Hand of Fate. That's the choose your skill and attributes part. Next, you roll genetics. This is basically, I'll have a description. These descriptions aren't gonna stay. They're just fillers for now. Basically, you roll a D100 on the table and see what your bonus is. And like I said, I'll have I'll put some sort of nice flavor text in there. But let's go ahead and start. We're gonna roll on the genetics table. You roll once, and that's what you get. I rolled an 8. So I gain the awareness skill. So he has particularly good senses. Oh, so another note is there are some rules for character creation, which I didn't go over. When you create a character, if you gain the same skill twice, you start with mastery in that skill. If you have a skill already and you have a choice of skills, you say later on you'll be able to choose this skill or that skill for one of the results. If you have one of the skills already, you have to choose the other. If you have both of them, then you get to choose which one gets mastery. So you can't intentionally gain mastery. I made it so gaining mastery at the beginning is possible but more difficult. If you roll a skill randomly, if it's just a total random skill roll to see what skill you get and you already have it, you'll gain mastery for it. There is ways that if you look at the tables, and these tables are going to change a little bit. They're not the final tables, but there's ways that you can pretty much make sure your character is going to start with mastery in a skill of your choice. But anyways, so I rolled the awareness skill. So now this guy's got 2 technical attribute, and the survival, endurance, and awareness skill. Some of the things you can get on this table are bonus wounds. Some of them are kind of weak. +1 health is a little weak to start with. You can gain extra henchmen and followers. You can gain nothing. Nothing is one of the roles. You're absolutely average. So we gain the awareness skill. That's the first one. The second, and like I said, there'll be a good description, and it'll help you kind of maybe give you some guidance on what your character is, or just add as inspiration to how you want to describe them. The second role is going to be the upbringing table. This is kind of how you were raised. It's essentially the same as the genetics table, but in this case, it'll just cover some different things. Where the genetics table covered more physical-based skills and attributes, this table will cover more of the emotional or social or emotional and social stuff. So let's go ahead and roll. So I got a 58, and that will be the will skill. So he has also gained the will skill. So he was brought up in a household that promoted him to have a strong will. All right, so the next 2 tables are your profession table. This is basically what you were doing before the apocalypse. And your passion table. This is what your character is passionate about, or what they like what they feel in their heart of hearts. For these 2 tables, these are D10 tables. There's 10 possibilities. You are either allowed to roll randomly and gain an additional 3 XP to start, or you can pick it. So this way you have a little more control. It's not completely random. You have a little more control over what your profession is, and you have a little more control over what your passion is. But if you leave it to chance, you're allowed to gain the additional XP at the beginning. So we'll go ahead and do the chance version. That's a little more fun. So I'll gain the bonus 3 XP because I'm going to roll my profession randomly. And let's see what we get. So we rolled a 3, which is a peasant, of course. So in the we'll go over all the professions real quick too, just to give you a taste. So there's the vagabond. That's the guy who just wanders. You got your scholars. Those are your priestly type. Your the cloistered monks in the library, that kind of thing. You got your peasant. That's your basic field worker or laborer. There's your soldier. You also have a criminal. There's a trader, an artist, nobility, the craftsman, and a woodsman. Those are the professions. So for peasant, you get, so we now get to choose between the physical attribute or the technical attribute. I'm out of page. There we go. So we're going to choose, we already have the technical one. So let's go ahead and go with physical one. So he's a little bit more physically fit and strong. Then we get an additional +1 wounds. And then we choose between the strength and endurance skill. So because we already have the endurance skill and we don't have the strength skill, we have to choose the strength skill. And that's it. Oh, we also gain 5 food, which is a resource. I'll go over all the resources when we do the camp. So we get +5 food. Alright, so we've done our profession. Now we move on to our passion. Now if I wanted to pick a passion that I already have these 2 skills in, I could gain mastery in that skill. But we're going to roll randomly because it's more fun. So the passions that your character can have are recognition, adventure, possession, creativity, freedom, knowledge, charity, survival, violence, and leisure. Those are the passions. They kind of describe what your character aspires to. We rolled a 7. 7 is charity. So we get to pick a skill. We have empathy or faith skill. So faith is used for prayers. Prayers are sort of like spells. I'll get to that later, but I think I want to have access to that. So we'll take the faith skill. Then we gain an additional camp follower, which is nice. The more followers, the better. Your upkeep goes higher, but you also get more dice in your dice pool. And I think that's it for charity. Now we go to fortunes. This is kind of like how your life has treated you. And this is a straight roll. This, you don't get to choose this. The only 2 you get to choose are your profession and your passion. For fortunes, let's see what happened to this fella. 19. So we gain an additional 5 coins. So we get +5 coin. Alright. So that's the 7th step. So, and then there's, or that's the 6th step. So then there's the 7th step. Only your protagonist does all of these. The only things that the henchmen do is the first step. So the last step is called the Sands of Time. For this step, first thing you're going to do is you're going to determine your starting age. You roll 46, add 14. Oh, he's old. He's starting at 19 plus 14 is 33. So we're starting at 33. Now you are allowed to roll up to 3 times on this table. You can stop at any time or continue to roll after you've seen the first or second roll. You can then continue on. The way this table works is you'll gain an effect and then you'll get an age bump. Very few of them have 0. And this just basically helps fill out maybe some of the details of your life prior to the beginning of the campaign. They're about 50-50 on good and bad. And the age bumps go anywhere from 0 to 9. So if you roll 3 times and you get +9 3 times, this fella's going to be what, 27? He'll be 60. So it's possible to get your character to be aged pretty quickly at the beginning of the game, but we're probably going to roll all 3 times just to have fun with it. It's more fun to be random. So unless something bad happens. So our first roll will be a 9. +1 random item and +3 age. +1 random item. So if it ever says random item, there's a whole big random items chart with nested tables in it. You'll just roll on the full random item table. Some other ones will say random medical item, random resource item, anything like that. Random item, which is a nice roll. And then we're going to add +3 age. So that's a good roll. Let's roll again. A 41 will be gain 1 random skill. 1 skill. And what's that one? +4 age. So we're going to get a random skill. We'll go ahead and roll that now. There's a random skill table down here at the bottom. Let's see what our random skill is. We've got a lot of skills too, so if any one of those comes up on this table, we'll gain mastery. So we rolled a 28. 28 is creativity. So we got creativity as a skill. So that was the second roll. And the final roll, those are 2 pretty good rolls. We could stop here, but we'll roll one more time. And an 84. -1 physical attribute, which is a bad one to get. But we got +1, so it's not too bad. You can have a 0 in an attribute, or even a negative, I guess. But you're always allowed to roll 1 dice regardless, so you could have a 0 in physical, but you'll still always get at least 1 dice. Alright, so we got -1 physical. And how much did that age us? I didn't write that down. +5. Alright, so that is our protagonist. We've essentially figured out everything we need to know about him, with the exception of... there is no other random roll. Oh, we had a random item. We'll go ahead and roll that up now. So, for all these items, I only have rules for the weapons and armor right now. And not even all of them. I don't have rules quite yet for the... I just have them written on here. But none of the other items in this entire game have any rules assigned to them yet. I had an idea when I put them on the list, so as they come up, I'm going to have to write in rules. But let's go ahead and roll our random item. Here's our master table up here. Got a 70, so we're going to find sundries. And here's our sundries nested table. We can get clothing, consumables, and goods. We got 15, which is clothing. We're going to get some additional clothing. And where's our clothing table? I need to fix these tables. They didn't quite come out correctly in an order. Here's our clothing table. We will start with 70. Sturdy clothing. So sturdy clothing is... I know the rules for that one. So I'll write it down. That's what we got for a random item. So during upkeep, if you don't spend enough wood, you take exposure. And you take 2 exposure points for if you don't spend a wood for every population. And if you have sturdy clothing in your camp cache or equipped to a character, you'll take 1 less exposure for not paying it. Basically, you're wearing better clothes. So -1, 2 exposure gain. So we've got sturdy clothing. Alright, so now that we've figured out... Oh, and we got to determine our age. We'll just figure out our age here. So 33 plus 12 is 45. So we're starting at 45. Random items. Alright, so where is the character creation? There it is. Got some age stuff in the back. So 45 puts us at aged. So our category is aged. We're 45 years old. And at 45, your starting stats are... So this is actually 6. I changed the movement because I upped the board size. Originally, I was going to be playing missions on a 2x2 foot board, but I decided to go with a 3x3 to add a little more space between things. Because on a 2x2, it was going to end up being a little too crowded. Alright, so aged, we're going to get a starting movement of 6. That'll stay the same. We did both of the randoms, so we'll start with 6 experience. You start with a +1. You start with 1 woe and 0 wounds. So let's add up our woes. We start with 1. Now we're at 2. Yep, so we're going to start with 2. 2 woes. And wounds start at 0, but we gained 1 from here. And that's it. 2. Gain another one here. Yeah, so we're at 2 wounds. And our health will begin at 6 as well. Yeah, so we'll start with a 6 health. We have 1 in our physical. We have 1 in every one except for technical. We have 2 in technical. We would have ended up with 2 in physical, but we rolled that sans a time. That gave us -1. We gain a bonus skill for being older, and that's a chosen skill. And when you choose a skill, you can't choose a skill you already have. But we can choose any of the skills here. So our protagonist is going to be rather skilled, which is good. Maybe give him a charisma-based skill, or a social-based skill. Let's go, or engineering, but we can give that to somebody else. Let's give him gravitas. That's a good one for a leader to have. We'll give him gravitas. So, gravitas skill. Let's just start writing the skills down here. So we've got gravitas. We have survival and endurance. So I noticed, I've made quite a few characters and camps and stuff. I've noticed you start with around 5. That's pretty common. More than that seems to be uncommon. And less than that seems to be uncommon. You tend to start with 5 skills. This guy's going to have a few more, I think. He has the awareness. He has the will skill. He's got the strength skill. This guy started with quite a few skills. He has the faith skill. He has 7 to start. That's pretty darn good. That's the most I've rolled up so far. And he has no statuses at the beginning, so that's good. Oh, he has creativity as well. He has 8 skills. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. And we'll go ahead and give him the sturdy clothing. So we'll write that right in his worn slot. So all items are going to have where you can keep them. You're always allowed to basically stow anything. These are item stats. They'll have whatever effect they have. And then they'll also have, I haven't quite figured out how I want to word it, but we're going to call it a scrap value. And it'll be something similar to, basically it's the value you get if you essentially recycle the item and gain the material. So you can kind of, sort of like Fallout style, you break your weapons down and you gain resources for it. You'll be able to do that with any of the equipment, or most of the equipment as well. Some equipment you won't be able to do that. And then also when equipment gets damaged, that scrap value will be the value you need to spend in resources in order to repair it. And also you can craft some items with a crafting skill, and you'll have to spend whatever the scrap value of the item, and you'll double that, and that's what you spend to actually create an item from nothing. Or from resources, I should say. Alright, so give him the sturdy clothing. And I believe we have, we'll keep that off to the side. We've got 5 coin to start. And they've got 5 food to start. We have 6 XP, which I already wrote down. And that is it. That is all I have to do for now. So that's our protagonist, Elric Jackman. I used a fantasy name generator to come up with these names. It's pretty much the only thing random. So now we're going to create our henchmen. You start with 3. Henchmen are your better than your camp followers. If your protagonist ever is killed, you're going to promote one of your henchmen to be the protagonist. If you don't have any henchmen when your protagonist is killed for some reason, you'll just promote one of your camp followers. Camp followers do not gain experience points, but henchmen can. All right. So you start with 3 henchmen. I already named them. And the way you do henchmen is you only perform step 1 of the character creation. So we're only going to do Hand of Fate. So we're going to choose 1 attribute, 2 skills, and then we have 2 points for wounds and woes. You don't track their age unless they become the protagonist, and then you'll roll that after the fact. But for now, we're just doing 3 henchmen. So I want a physical henchman. I want a technical henchman. And I would like a social one, maybe? Let's go with a social henchman. So that's the bonus point I put in each of those attributes. We will then choose 2 skills. We'll have the physical henchman have the martial skill, which is fighting, because nobody can really fight all that well right now. And we will have I have the strength skill. We'll give him the resilience skill. Make him a little tougher in some circumstances. For our technical guy, we will do the engineering and crafting skill. So he's the guy who's better at making and fixing stuff. Then our social guy will have charisma and barter. Alright. And then everybody starts with 6 health, 6 movement, and then we choose 0 XP to start. And then we choose wounds and woes. So we'll have the physical guy have 2 wounds, 0 woes. Technical guy have 1 of each. Social guy will have 2 woes and 0 wounds. And then their inventory. We'll get to that when we get our initial starting items. So that's it. Henchmen were easy. We've created all of our henchmen. And now we do our camp followers. You determine your starting number of camp followers, and that's on the camp stats section here. You will start with, I believe, a D3 plus 3 camp followers. Plus we're going to get an additional one because we rolled a bonus one. So we're going to start with 2 plus 3 is 5. So I'm going to need 2 more names from the fantasy name generator here. Grab 2 more names. Elf word. And Patrick. Okay, so you don't make any choices with camp followers. Whenever you gain a camp follower, he just automatically gets a random skill. Every camp follower has a single random skill. And all their attributes are 1s. So let's go to a random skill table. So I'm just going to roll them right down the line here. First is, oh, that's the delayed one. Bring that back up. 32. 32 is endurance. Then we have Eustace. He will have, oops. 70. 70 is resourceful. Oh, that's a good one. I should have given it to one of the henchmen. Should have given that to a henchman. Oh well. Or I should have chose that with my protagonist. Next one is a 71. Is that resourceful again? It is resourceful again. And it's not a terrible thing to get a skill twice, especially a good one like this. And you'll see why once we actually do the first campaign turn. Next skill is a 71 again. Jeez. So he'll be resourceful. No wonder they all survived. Next one is a 15, which is... I don't even have this on the... I gotta bring it up a little bit. 15 is barter. And then last is a 19, which will be charisma. Okay. That is all the characters. Now we move on. So we've created all the characters at this point. So now we'll be moving on to starting camp. So the camp has statuses. Let's bring it down a little closer. These are tracked to see if people die or leave because things are bad. Then there's the stats. These are your population. There's the stat burden, which adds to the population, but doesn't add an additional character. This can happen during the game. Say one of your camp followers is on a mission and gets injured really badly. It would be better if they died, but if you get a really bad roll, then they're basically crippled and you still have to care for them. They become a burden. They can no longer contribute to the camp, but you still have to feed them and keep them warm. So that's the burden stat. Morale just adds to a few rolls. During missions, morale will come into play. And also morale offsets stress by point for point. So having a higher morale can mean your camp can be more stressed out, but they're not necessarily going to leave. Reputation is a good and bad thing. A high reputation is good because it lets you recruit more and have a better social interaction. But it also increases possibility of a camp raid. Basically, bandits and stuff are more aware of you. So the high reputation is good, but it can also cause more raids. And if you have a low reputation, that can also be good in a way because it'll keep you from getting raided. It'll just make it harder to gain more camp followers. Then there's luck. Luck is just re-roll any roll. You get them. You start with 3, actually. I'm supposed to write that down. You start with 3 luck, and you get them throughout the game. And you spend them throughout the game. It's just a meta currency, if you will. And then there's points of interest. These are places it's basically also just another resource. And during a mission, you'll be allowed to spend points of interest to add points of interest markers on the board. And they're essentially they're like the treasure chests. They'll have better things in them by investigating them or ransacking them. So that's that. Population is just the total number of characters in the camp, including yourself. And population basically determines what the hunger, exposure, stress, disease, injury, and fatigue. Population will determine if those things actually start affecting you. Then there's 2 types of resources. There's raw resources and refined resources. So the game's got a lot of scavenging in it. When you actually do your missions, you're going to actually be scavenging in buildings, the terrain in the buildings. There's a lot of things you can build and repairing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a big list of 14 resources. Each raw resource has a corresponding refined resource, and they all do different things. So the resources are food, fiber, wood, skins, stone, ore, and salvage. Salvage is basically bits of metal and parts and nails and that kind of thing that you find. And then the refined resources are provisions. That's like your iron rations and stuff from food. Cloth, lumber, leather, bricks, metal, and parts. So those are all your resources. What else we got to talk about? The camp cache. This is just stuff that's accessible to every character in the whole camp, or during missions too, even. And then there's coins. Coins acts like a resource. Everything's going to have a value to it. Coins aren't always going to be used unless it's a friendly trader that you're trading with. You can't use coins. The only way people are going to accept gold or silver coins is if they're friendly with you, because it's the apocalypse, so they're not putting too much stock in gold. So that's that. And so we are now creating our camp. I've gone over all the stats and stuff. We didn't start with any of these, so these are all 0. All the statuses start at 0 unless you gain one during character creation. Population is going to be 10 for this group, because we've got protagonist and 3 henchmen and then 6 camp followers. So we have a population of 10. That's actually pretty high. Morale always starts at 0. Reputation will start at 0, but when you create a camp, you get to pick one structure. I'll get into structures later. But structures have the benefit of giving you +1 to your reputation, or even sometimes -1. So this structure that we're going to start with is going to give us a +1, and our base is 0 because our camp level is 0. I'll get into that in a second too. So reputation is going to start at 1, and that'll give us a reputation bonus of -1. So we're not well known yet. We're going to get -1 to most social interactions because our reputation is low. All right, for the other part of the camp, so you've got structures in your camp, and they'll do things. But then you have your camp itself, and it has a level. And as you progress, the progression bar of your camp, basically you're building up your camp more and more by spending resources and taking that action. You'll increase your maximum population, your maximum impact. Impact is how many structures you can have. Some structures have 0, but some other structures will increase impact. So maximum impact it basically defines how many structures your camp can have. Your camp level also gives you a base reputation score, and that is it for the camp. So during the course of the game, you're going to be, hopefully if you have the spare resources, you're going to be upgrading your camp in order to gain the ability to have more population, more structures, and a better reputation. So let's go into structures real quick. You're going to be able to start with one structure, and right now it's going to be, you won't be able to pick any one structure. It's going to be any impact 0 structure from a list. There'll be a list of starting possible structures. Structures is one thing I haven't really done too much work on. I only have a few, and one of them is the campfire kitchen. So basically every playtest I've done so far has basically only had the campfire kitchen structure. So you start with it already progressed and operating. They have an impact score, which again is how many structures your camp can have. They have the reputation score. Some having certain structures will make you more desirable to follow, and some others will make it more less desirable, and also keep people from raiding you. There's a skill test involved, so there's a campaign action called work, and you take the action, you pick a structure you have, and that will give you the skill test you roll, and whatever the effect is. Whenever you use a structure, there'll be an encounter chance. This is when random things can happen. It's just a percentile chance. So 10 or lower on a percentile dice. If you use the structure, you roll a 10 or lower, you're going to end up with an encounter. And then some structures have passive effects. The campfire kitchen does not have a passive effect. I don't think it does, anyways. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So that's how structures work. And then the active effect is you can, for every success on the skill test you roll, you get to discard 2 food to gain 3 food. But essentially, it's the logic here is you're cooking your food and you're making it better and more edible. So that's that. So we now will finish creating the camp. So we already rolled our characters. Then you get to start with an automatic 5 food and 5 wood. So we're now at 10 food and 5 wood. And then you gain 2d3, and you can gain that many any basic resource. I found that starting with more food and wood at the beginning of the game is probably the way to go. Just because I need to tweak some of the balancing with the early game survival. It seems to be very difficult. So we're going to start with 2. So we get to pick any 2. I guess we'll pick 2 wood. So we now have 7 wood and 10 food to start. So you get to start with a weapon per character, and you don't get any other things other than the structure and the resources. Yep. So you start. What's this? Yeah. So you start with either a bludgeon or a light blade. I've got 10 guys, so I'll probably go 50-50. I'll give my main character a light blade. I'll give the offensive dude here, he'll get a light blade as well. Give the other 2 characters bludgeons. And we'll go over weapons during the actual mission. They're not important during the campaign. Beyond selling or possibly scrapping for parts. Alright, and then we get 6 more light blades or bludgeons to cover them, so we'll get 3 and 3. So 3 light blades in our cache. And 3 bludgeons. We're going to start with 5 coins. We're going to start with 10 food. We're going to start with 7 wood. And then 0 of the rest. So you can survive with just food and wood. As long as you have food and wood, you won't lose camp followers. But it's tough. And you need all these other resources to build structures, repair items if they get damaged, craft new items. All the resources can be traded if you can find someone to trade with. But the basics are food and wood, and you can survive off just that. All right. So that is our camp. All right, so that's it. We have fully created our character. We've fully created our henchman. We've determined all of the camp followers we have. We've got our structure. We've got our resources all figured out, and all of our starting stuff. All right, so that's it for creating that part. Now we move on to the map. So the map's going to be a hex crawl, a 10 by 10. Each hex is going to be numbered, sort of like D100 World Builder. That way, when we can roll percentiles and generate a random hex. You start in the middle, any one of the middle 4. So as long as you're 4 hexes away from any edge, you can start there. So basically, we can start in any one of these 4 hexes. We're just going to start in 55 to make it easy. I like to put a little dot. I will eventually come up with maybe some sort of symbol key. You're welcome to do whatever you want on your maps. But I saw in the D100 World Builder videos, he had like a little, what do you call it? Sort of a suggestion on how to draw your maps. You don't actually have to draw anything in your map. You can just write some stuff in the hex itself, and then you can do additional details on the back for locations. That's how I'm probably going to do it. But if you wanted to draw a map, I'll probably have some suggestions on symbols or how to do it. All right, so we're starting in hex 55. So now we get to do the hex generation. We don't need any of this stuff anymore. Don't need structures. Oh yeah, here we go, hex generation. And I should go over structures more, but I'll do that another time. They're not going to come into play these first two turns. All right, 4, setting up your initial map. First thing you do is you roll on the initial settlement. So it's the apocalypse, but it's medieval time, so you don't know it's not like nowadays where you travel regularly 30, 40 miles and you know pretty much everything in between. You basically know your starting point, and you're going to know basically the major settlements in the area. So there's going to be most of the major settlements will be pre-generated, and that's the only hexes that are pre-generated. Beyond that, you're not going to know anything outside your hex. So first we determine how many, and this table might be subject to change here. Haven't quite decided on it. But we're going to start with our initial, and all settlements are ruined. Any cities, villages, towns start ruined. Yeah, because it's the apocalypse. So we're going to see what our starting settlements will be. We got a 24, so we got one ruined town in this whole 100 by 100 map area. There's one single ruined town. And that will be located on hex number 44. Here's our 40 column, here's our 4. So in this hex, there is a ruined town. Okay, simple. Next step is we're gonna generate this hex, and we're also gonna generate our starting hex. So when you generate a hex that doesn't have any hexes adjacent to it, and there's a whole set of rules for generating hexes, but for now we're gonna go in just the order. So this is generating a random hex with no adjacent hexes. Hexes are gonna have 3 features and possibly a road, and then locations. The 3 main features are geography, so we just simply roll on the geography table. This hex is plains. Then we figure out what kind of, what the water table is of this particular hex. There's modifiers depending on what the hex is, so no modifier for plains. We end up with a 67, so streams and ponds. So streams. Then we roll on the vegetation, and we are going to add 5 to this roll because it's streams and ponds. We rolled an 83, so it's an 88, which is forest. So forest. So this particular hex has streams and ponds, has a nice big forest, and it's on relatively flat land. We will now generate our own hex. And we'll see what the geography is. And this hex is not adjacent to us, so it won't influence what we are here. We rolled an 11, is a plains again. Then we go to our geography. Is a 3, which is, no, this is our water table, or our water. So arid, so we're in an arid plains, almost desert-like. Very little water. And then we'll go to our vegetation. Because the area is arid, we're going to subtract 30 from this roll. We ended up with a 42, which is, oh, good, grasslands. So grasslands isn't like a ten by 10 hex of stretching meadow. It's grasslands is more like your typical, I guess, New England area with, there's some foresting, there's some hills, some grass, some forest. You know what I mean? It's a mixture. Um, the forest roll is where you have your dense primordial forests. So we're in grasslands. Call it grass. Should make it easy. All right. So we have generated the two starting hexes. Usually start with more. That was the worst possible roll. Anything 25 or under, you're going to get a single ruined town. So we have. Oh, and then you also have to determine an initial location in the hex you're in. So there'll be, because basically a ruined town is a location, so we know of this ruined town. But then we also have to generate a location in our current hex. And to do that, I need not the mission rules, exploration tables. We have all of these locations. You find locations by exploring during the campaign phase in a hex, but right now we're going to see what our initial location is. And it is a 45. It is a neglected church. This is probably where somewhere where we've been hanging out. I'm not going to have enough room to write that. N church. We're going to write all of the location information down on the back. But for now, I just want to write it on the front. All right. So there is a neglected church in our arid plains grasslands. We're in a bad starting hex. It's not going to be easy. We're going to have to definitely move right out of the gate. All right. Then once we've generated our initial settlements and our initial hexes, you will start connecting roads. Now, I only rolled one settlement, which is unusual. But the way you start is, say, I'll use these gray dice as possible settlements. So we start here, and there's a settlement here. We'll say there's one here. We'll say there's one down here. The way you generate an initial set of roads. The way it'll work is you pick the closest settlement to your hex, and you connect it with a road by the shortest means possible. Wherever there's a choice, you can choose which way the road goes, but as long as it's the shortest way possible. So for this particular one, we'll go through here and then right into this hex. And then this hex will go to, would end up going here, because that would be the next closest road to this hex, and then the last road would be this one. So the road would go like that. But in this instance, we only have the two points, so we only have that one little road. And just like in D100 World Builder, when you generate a road, you'd have to generate which way the road exits. And if it's the same, so I do it. I'll write it on this one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's the way it'll work. So we're gonna roll and see where the road exits. Exits at 6, so it's gonna come out up here. So we know the road goes off into that hex, and then we have to do the other end of this road, which is our starting square. And that road will exit on a 5, which is right through here. So there's our starting road. We have our two starting hexes and our starting locations all figured out. Not quite all figured out. We have to actually determine our starting location. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. I'll be right back. All right. So now we're going to determine our location. So every location is going to have these stats. So first, let me figure out, we'll do this first one here on hex 44. So the first location will be hex 44. The second one will be 55. That's where we are. All right, so the first one was a ruined town. All right, so now we need to determine the occupants. So for occupants, this is the most common people or things that are going to be there. So for the ruined town occupants, it's not necessarily that they control this entire ruined town. It's just the most common type of person or enemy you'll see there. So there's a table here, which is a D10 table. And the most common occupant is a 10, which is going to be the current Calamity or Wretched Humanity if there isn't an enemy associated with that Calamity. So we haven't figured out what the Calamity is yet. That's the last step. So for right now, we'll just call it Calam. And then now we figure out Danger. Right now, there's nothing modifying these rolls. I had considered giving every location modifiers to these rolls. But for now, we're just going to play them. They're just a straight roll for now. So we basically roll the Danger, which is a D6 minus 1. It's going to start off at Danger 4 for our +4 for our ruined town. Population is just a straight D6 roll, but it can range down to 0. But it starts at a 6. This town is not going to be a good place, I can already tell you that. Resource level is a D6 minus 3 for starting. 4 minus 3 is +1. That's good. Any bonus is good. Loyalty is if there's an outpost, you will have a loyalty score. This is not an outpost. We don't need a loyalty score. And then missions are the available missions for a ruined town. There's going to be a list of missions you can choose from. So when you take the adventure action at this ruined, you're in this. So here we go. Here, let's set this up. You're in this you're at the hex with this ruined town in it. You take the adventure action. You spend your hours that it costs to do it, and then you take a mission. That's when you do an actual tabletop mission. Every location is going to have different types of missions you can choose from. You'll always have the scavenging run mission available at any location. You can always go on a scavenging run. And then every location will have missions assigned to it. There's going to be, so far I only got about 6 missions or so. They're mostly just concepts. I haven't really developed them yet, except for the scavenge run mission. I have already developed that one. So we're gonna leave that blank for now because I don't have all the missions figured out yet. And then terrain again. Every one of these locations will have the terrain you need to set up that location. So in a ruined town, there's probably going to be several ruined buildings that you're going to add to the terrain. And we'll get into the reasons why terrain's important later, beyond just decorating your board and adding line of sight blocking. Terrain you'll be interacting with pretty much every mission. So that's B for the terrain. And again, I don't have that written up for the ruined town yet. So for now, we've got danger, population figured out, resources figured out. All right. So the way it works so far is whatever the danger score of that location, you're going to add to rolls for raid if you're in this hex when you roll a raid. And I guess I wrote add to encounter rolls. I don't recall what that means. That was a note, and I should have written more. That might be okay. I think that's so. During a mission, you'll roll every couple of turns. It depends on the mission. You'll roll every few turns for basically, if more enemies show up while you're in that location doing your mission, and I think the danger stat will add to that roll. Pretty sure that's what that means for encounter rolls. And then there's the population stat for a location. This number will add to the amount of enemies you are facing when you're in an area. You won't always start with enemies on the board. But when they are on the board, you'll start with additional enemies based off the population. And you can reduce the population. So those missions I was talking about earlier, some missions will have the objective. If you complete the objective of some missions, you can reduce the danger of a location. You can reduce the population of a location. You may reduce the resources, or you could possibly increase the resources for some missions. So there's that. So resources will add to it'll either add to terrain present, giving you more opportunity to get raw and refined resources, or it will add to the roll you make when you actually extract those resources from the terrain. I haven't figured out exactly how I want to run resources. Right now I'm going to run it as it just adds to your roll, rather than adding additional pieces of terrain to a location. I think there's going to be enough terrain at pretty much every location to not be an issue. So there's that. Occupants, like I said, it's just the most common enemy there. That'll come in later when you're rolling during missions for encounters. And loyalty is not important right now because we don't have any outposts showing. So loyalty has a range. You can affect it with diplomacy actions during the campaign phase to increase. If the loyalty stat is -1 or down to -10, they're considered a hostile outpost. So you can't do any trading with them or anything like that. You can't recruit from them. You can't gain camp followers from them. They essentially act like any other location on the map that you can do an adventure in and actually attack them and, do a raid mission and reduce their population or whatever. Then there's the loyalty stat from 0 to 9, and that'll be a neutral outpost. Those are the outposts that you can trade with. You can recruit from them even. But because they're neutral, you can't actually spend your coin resource because they won't accept gold. They'll only accept barter because it's an apocalypse. And then anything that's 10 or more is considered a friendly outpost. And those will accept coin. You'll get bonuses for recruiting from them and that sort of thing. Now, during the game, there will be there'll be opportunities where you actually get to set up outposts, and you'll be able to transfer. You'll have to spend your resources and transfer some of your camp followers, but you can set up an outpost on the map for you to do trading with later on. I haven't fully written that system up yet, but pretty excited about that one. That seems like fun. You get to actually interact and change the map and set up outposts. It kind of was inspired by like the Fallout 4 settlement system where you can build settlements, but there's also the risk that those settlements will eventually turn hostile if you mess around with them too much. So there's that. So that's the outposts. They are simply locations on the map. So now we also have to determine our stats for this. What was it? Neglected Church. So this neglected church, the occupants will be a 9. So it'll be the same as this one. So if our starting Calamity doesn't have an enemy associated with it, it will be Wretched Humanity. That's kind of your lower end enemies. I'll get into that later. Alright, so that's our locations. I think all locations are sorted out for now. Alright. I think that's our starting map completed. We've got our starting camp location. We're in Hex 55. There's a neglected church here. It's plains grasslands and it's arid, so I'm picturing like middle of the summer middle of the country, the grass is dry, it hasn't rained in forever. That's kind of the area we're starting in. Then there's a forested hex to the north of us here. We got a road we can follow, which is good. Roads reduce the amount of hours you spend traveling. And there we go. We got our starting map. We got our starting camp. We've got our starting protagonist, henchmen, and camp followers. And the last thing we have to do to set up the campaign is generate the Calamity. And the Calamity is still inside my notebook right now. I haven't gotten it written up yet to print. So this is the driving factor of the game. It's the apocalypse in this medieval apocalypse survival game. There are 10 basic, or not basic, but there's 10 calamities that are going to occur throughout the course of your campaign. They'll take a varying amount of time, depends on the types of actions you take. So during a campaign turn, you'll take certain actions that will increase your calamity level, and you'll mark that as you go. And then at the end of every calendar upkeep, every 7 days, you'll roll and see if a new calamity occurs. While a calamity is active, you will have a story that you can play out. You don't have to complete the story. You won't lose if you don't, but you'll follow the story and try to complete the calamity finale before the next calamity begins. And the next calamity begins when you fail the roll during the week upkeep there. I have a small D10 table to figure out what mission for each chapter of the story is, and then every calamity will have a finale. And the finale is unique to the calamity, and it's do this particular mission before the calamity's over with, and you basically win that particular calamity. Doesn't make calamity stopping. You haven't won the campaign. You've just won that particular end of the world scenario. So here are all the different calamities that can occur. So it's a D10 table, but when you start the game, you only roll a D6, and these last 4 on the table are your more fantastical ones. They'll introduce zombies and stuff. But your first apocalypse it's all going to be grounded in reality. The first one, at least. So the first one we have is the God Fist. It's a meteor strike. There's going to be some. I've got that one written up. Basically, there's darkness rules, and every time you play a mission, you'll be in darkness. And there's a frequent follow-up meteor strikes that'll happen on the map and destroy hexes as the calamity continues. Then there's the Red Death, which is basically the bubonic plague. And we'll go over each one. You can basically all outposts won't trade with you. The disease status that you gain while you play is far worse during the Red Death's active. So there's that one. Then there's the Earth Purge, which is a supervolcano eruption. That'll also blot out the sky and make everything dark. And there's a cool little lava flow mechanism that you'll generate where the volcano is, and you'll generate a lava flow that'll progress as the campaign continues. There's Earth Asunder. That's going to be just megaquakes, just constant megaquakes. So every week or so there'll be an earthquake that'll destroy hexes. Then number 5 is the Wasting. That's just a terrible famine. You'll have to spend more food, or I'll make the penalty for not keeping up with your hunger will be worse. I think I wrote it down. I don't remember exactly how the mechanism works, but basically it simulates you starving because there's not enough food around. And then the last one is Ragnarok. That's a mini ice age occurs, and that one's fun too because the top 10 hexes on the map are considered frozen. And being in frozen hexes have, obvious penalties for being in, like, the Antarctica, anything like that. Your exposure is worse. You can't fish because all the water's frozen. And the way Ragnarok works is the frozen hexes creep down every campaign calendar upkeep. until it's over. So those are the 6 that are grounded in reality. Then after the first calamity's rolled, whenever you roll the next calamity during the campaign, like say you finished your calamity, you roll during the upkeep and you start another one, then you'll roll the full d10, and then you can get some of the more interesting ones. So for number 7, there's the No More Room in Hell, and it's what it sounds like: bunch of zombies. The dead no longer stay dead, and there's going to be zombies roaming around now. Then there's the Armageddon War. That's like the biblical Armageddon War, where there's going to be markers on the map, 4 of them, that are big, massive armies, and the Battle of Armageddon is happening on the map. You have to kind of dodge and stay out of the reach of these armies as you play in the map area. Then there's the Stars Align. If that one comes up, it'll open up more creatures, and it'll I think it will probably empower magic as well. I haven't written that one up yet, but it's going to give you your Eldritch Horrors, like your Cthulhu style Eldritch Horrors, and I'm going to do some research and come up with a bunch of folklore monsters and fairies and that kind of stuff, like from history folklore, and make a whole bunch of monsters for that to add to the encounter tables. And then the last one on this list is the Gates of Hades, and that's basically like, think Oblivion. Gates open up and demons come out. It's gonna be more. It's probably gonna align more with Warhammer, the Warp, than it would with Oblivion, but they kind of are similar anyways. So those are the calamities. Those are like the driving aspect of the game. You're gonna roll 1 to begin with, and then as the campaign progresses, more will happen, and they compound too. If you complete the calamities finale, like you go through the story missions and you complete the finale, it will kind of stop the effect of that calamity. But if you fail to complete the finale of that calamity, when the new calamity occurs, they now compound. Both calamities are now active, and so on. So if you fail to complete, say, 4 calamities after a certain set period of time, you've let 4 go by and haven't completed them, this map's going to be a nightmare to live in. You're probably not going to survive. Also, there's the end game calamity. So say you've played all 10 of these, you managed to survive. You've completed all 10 calamities. Whether or not you've succeeded at them or not, it doesn't matter. You've survived to the point where you're now on the 11th calamity. At that point, it's I call it the final judgment, and that's where all hexes are considered arid and barren, so there's no vegetation, no water. All outposts are gone. Any encounter that shows up that has a regular human is not there. There's no humans. You can't recruit camp followers anymore. It's like basically the whole world is destroyed, and you see how long you can survive. That's kind of like the end game. But that's the calamity system. We're now going to roll our calamity. That was a big, long explanation. It's the title of the game. So you roll a d6 for your starting calamity, so you don't get those crazy ones to start with. So let's see what one we start with. Number 5 is the Wasting. I haven't rolled this one yet in playtesting. So let's bring our character sheet up. Where's our character sheet? So I don't think the Wasting has an associated enemy with it, which means those locations' occupants will be wretched humanity. Where's the character sheet? I picked it up. Where did I move it to? It's getting late for me. I don't stay up this late usually. Yeah, I think I warned you there was going to be paper shuffling. If I didn't, I'm warning you now. There's going to be paper shuffling. All right, so we have our calamity, the Wasting. We're on story chapter 1. I don't know what the chapter 1 mission is yet. I haven't figured out that table, but it's going to be, I think I have an idea of what they're going to be. Objective ideas, yep. So there's going to be things like establish an outpost at random hex, reduce a random location's danger to 0, destroy a hostile outpost. Any kind of objective that shows up during these calamity, like during the chapters, if you'll generate whatever thing needs to be done in order to complete it, you'll generate it. So in this instance, destroy a hostile outpost. Say that's what I roll for my story chapter 1 objective. I'll have to generate, if there isn't a hostile outpost on the map, or even if there is, you still will generate the objective on the map. So I'd have to create a hex that has a hostile outpost on it. Then there's find a specific artifact, recruit a specific person. I don't know about that one. I think that one's probably going to go, but we'll see. I wanted to add more social things in it and not just have it all be combat. There's gain a certain level of loyalty from an outpost. I wrote community, but it's going to be from an outpost. There's have a certain number and type of resource. So it's build up a stockpile of such and such. Then there's kill a certain number of enemies or a certain type of enemy. Then there's survive for a certain length of time at a hex. And then I had boss fight as the 10th objective idea. So those are objective ideas. I haven't written them out yet, so we're not going to worry about it now. But we are going to look up the wasting and see. Here it is. So here's a look at a calamity here. We've got the wasting. So we have universal rule. Food, fiber, and provisions can no longer be purchased. So if you're ever in a community, you can no longer gain food, fiber, or provisions. Any trade item result of those resources is ignored. So if you roll it when you're rolling for the items that you can purchase from a trader, if you generate food, fiber, or provisions, you ignore it. All forage, hunt, fish, and trap actions take twice as long and result in 1 less food per success. And that can be 0 food per success. Also, whenever wretched humanity enemies are placed on the board during an encounter, double their numbers. So wretched humanity are the starving masses during the apocalypse that'll give you a general hard time. So that's the universal rules for the wasting. During calendar upkeep, now fiber and provisions are discarded like food. Okay, so I think it is just food is discarded. I have to look it up. But during the wasting, you now discard fiber and provisions, so you can't stockpile food. Then the finale is generate a neutral outpost in a random hex. Give 20 food to that outpost. That's just a free action by being in the hex. If you succeed at the finale here, that neutral outpost gains enough loyalty to become friendly, and they also gift you 3 random items. If you fail it, that outpost becomes hostile, and the universal rules remain in effect until the end of the campaign. So that is an idea of a calamity. So the end of this particular world that we started in, just the food stopped growing. The animals died off. It's a massive famine that we are now surviving in. So, and there's other ones. There's the Earth Asunder. There's the Ragnarok. There's the... So, I got the rules for those first 6, anyways. I haven't done the rules for the zombies and stuff. Alright, so now we have our Calamity written out. There's no additional map stuff that happens with this one. Other than the fact that we know the occupants of these 2 locations are going to be wretched humanity. Okay. Oh, we never did the danger and stuff for this one. So, danger for the neglected church is 5 minus 1 is 4. Also 4. Population is a d6. 2 good. Excuse me. Resources. D6 minus 3. It's going to be -1. There's not going to be much at that location. There is no loyalty. I don't know the missions yet. I haven't written up the full list. And I haven't done the terrain yet. But, like I said, terrain is just going to be the additional, what we call ransackable pieces of terrain. Or interactable pieces. Alright. I have set up the whole map and everything's set. We now know our Calamity. So now we begin. So should have a pretty good idea now of all the attributes and parts of the game. At least are the parts of the character sheets. Now we actually begin the game. So, the way we play, we're going to play the first campaign turn. I'm not going to initiate a mission yet. We'll just do regular actions. So, let's go over what those regular actions are. I'll need this sheet for later. Alright. Alright, here's the campaign phase in a nutshell. It represents a single day of 24 hours. So the way it works is you reset your hours when you start the day. So we start with 24 hours. I like to use these dice here to track it. I like to do it in order. Because time of day can matter for missions, whether it's dark or not. So we got our 24 hours. We build our dice pool. So here's how it works. So your character will take these actions and will spend hours to take the actions. Every single other member of your camp, all 3 of your starting henchmen, will get a d6 in your dice pool. I'm going to keep them as white dice. Pool over here. And then every camp follower will also add an additional die to your dice pool. So there were 6 camp followers. We add 6 dice to the dice pool. Now, while your protagonist takes an action, you can add any number of these dice from the dice pool to that action one time. And you assign it to the particular character that's taking the action. So if I wanted my henchman, Simon, to help my character with a particular action, I would take the die and assign it to Simon. Now when I make the roll, I'm going to add an extra dice to it. And on top of that, there's my cat. Cat's snoring. On top of adding the extra dice to the dice pool, you'll also check to see if whoever you added to the dice pool has that skill. So if it was a test that involved resilience, my character doesn't have it, but the henchman does. So if I added him to that action, I'd get the bonus dice for having the skill. I'd add an additional 2 dice to the roll. Also, if you take a campaign action, some have to be the protagonist or a henchman, but some actions don't have to have the protagonist or henchman be involved. Then you can just roll dice from the dice pool without your character being involved, and it costs no hours. You don't have to spend hours to do it. It's your camp followers are doing stuff. They're doing the hunting, the logging, whatever. So that's how the dice pool works. And then you simply take the campaign actions. You take them all until you've spent all your hours and your dice pools run out. Then you go to Upkeep Phase. So for our first turn, we know that food's going to be an issue. So we will probably... Let's go through all the actions first. So we have... I'm going to move these dice out of the way. Here's the example of a campaign action. You have our skill test. I wrote mental, but I changed it to intellectual. So that's going to change. So we have a hard intellectual survival to forage. It costs 4 hours. The encounter chance is 10. Ignore the successes. I decided not to go changing the encounter chance based on your success. The calamity increase is 0. So if you take this action, you don't increase calamity at all. And here's the description. For every success you roll, you gain food and or fiber you can pick, according to the hex type. And I'll show that chart later. So that's that. So say my character takes the forage test. It's a hard intellectual survival. I check my character sheet. I have plenty of hours. I have 1 in intellectual, so I'd add 1 dice. And then I do have the survival skill, so I get to add 2 dice to that. So I take that campaign action, I'm rolling 3 dice. It's a hard action, so every 6 I get is a success. And you'll check the chart to see what you gain for food. I could also decide to add all 6 of my camp followers to this roll, and now I'm rolling 9 dice. Much more likely to get a success. So the more people you have, the more you can do, but also it's going to increase your upkeeps during the upkeep phase. So that was an example of how that would work. So that's pretty good. Don't really need to explain that any further. We've got the hunt skill is a hard technical survival, and it's 5 hours. It's an encounter chance of 5, and it does increase Calamity by 1. And then for each success, you gain food according to the hex type. Trap is another one. That's something my guy's gonna do is trap. Oh, it's crafting is the skill. I thought it was survival. I'm gonna change that. Yeah, he doesn't have crafting. I meant to. He was a trapper. That was what I had in my head. Trapping's not a great skill, but so we'll do or a great action to take. But I liked the idea. So crafting. He has the crafting skill instead. Now nobody has the survival skill. That's gonna bite us in the butt. All right, so we're looking at skills or actions. Okay. All right. So then there's the trap skill. We've got the scavenge. So this one is for every full. So sometimes you'll see this when you take a skill test. Or in the description. It'll be for each full set of 3 successes, you can gain any resource according to the hex type. So that's like you're scavenging an area. That's probably going to change, actually. I think I wanted this to be so you can obtain salvage resource. So I think that's what's I think that one's going to change to obtaining the salvage resource. So ignore that. Let me write that in. And then the calamity increase will be just 1. Gain salvage for success according to hex type. Okay, there we go. And there we go. Those the logging action, you're gaining wood for successes. Mining, you're gaining ore for successes. And you can also gain coin. It's kind of simulating you're finding gold. Quarry, you're gaining stone. And some of these difficulties are going to change. I've figured out that the forage and hunting one, as a hard, you only get 6s succeed. It's too hard to survive. So that probably will end up becoming a normal check. But quarry's easy. I figured it's easy to find stone. And it's got a calamity increase of 1. That doesn't sound right. Let's drop that to 0. Fishing, that's based on the water in your particular hex. And each success will gain you food. Then there's, so those are like the resource gathering campaign actions. Then we're moving on to others. There's the recruit action. It's a hard social gravitas. Takes 2 hours. There's an encounter chance of 5%. It does increase calamity by 1. Then you can only take this action once per campaign turn. And you may only take this action in a hex with a community or outpost. And for community, because I got rid of that, there was a whole thing with communities, but that was cut. So now it's a ruined settlement. So that ruined town that I rolled at the beginning, you can take a recruit action in that town and possibly find survivors there and recruit them, essentially. That's essentially what it is. Or if there's an outpost that you trade with that is either neutral or friendly, you can also take the recruit action there as well. Then it's for each full 2 successes, you gain a random camp follower. If you do this in a outpost, ignore community. Communities no longer exist. If you do this in an outpost, that outpost loses 2 loyalty, and then you can spend coin to reduce the loyalty loss by the same amount. So basically, you recruit people from a neutral or friendly outpost. You keep doing it and keep stealing their people, they're not going to be happy with you anymore. So that's the recruit action. We've got the diplomacy action. This is a hard social charisma test. And this one is, for each success, you increase the loyalty track of that outpost. Communities no longer exist. And then you can also discard coin to give you additional successes. That's good. So if you're at an outpost and you have recruited too many people and it's about to become hostile if you continue, you can do some diplomacy. You can also do diplomacy at hostile outposts and maybe be able to turn them to neutral. So that is the diplomacy action. Trade is a hard social barter. You can only take this once per campaign turn, and you can only take it in an outpost that contains or a hex that contains an outpost. There are no longer communities. And then the way it works is, for each success you generate a random item, and you may buy any and all of those generated items by discarding either items or resources of equal or greater value. Additionally, if you score at least 1 success, you may sell any number of resources or items for their value in coin. So you can always sell for coin if you succeed at a barter test. And then you may also buy any number of resources equal to the number of successes times 5. So you can buy resources if you need some, if you find enough. Finding an outpost is kind of essential. And you don't start with one on the map. You can always create one later on in the campaign if you still don't find one. You can create your own outpost and do trading with it and stuff. But so that's outposts. The refine skill. So the refine action is turning. So say you've gathered up all of your food and you've gathered fiber and wood and all those resources. You take the refine action, and then it's for each success you can discard 3 of that one resource and gain 1 of the refined version. And for upkeep, provisions will provide 3 times the benefit. So that's the refine action. A lot of structures are going to play into this. So there'll be like a stone cutting wheel that'll make it so you create, well, I guess it would be brick molds and stuff, or brick ovens to fire bricks. And you can, that structure will make doing this refine action a lot easier for creating bricks. And same thing with ore and metal. You can build a smelter, and the smelter will make it so you can transfer, or you can refine ore into metal more efficiently. Same thing with salvage and parts, all that stuff. So a bunch of there's going to be a bunch of structures. I've done a very small list of them so far, but that's that. So next action's a big one. This is build or repair camp or structure. So throughout the game, you can take damage to your structures through events. You also just have a natural attrition of all structures during a campaign or a calendar upkeep. Every structure in your camp will lose 1 blip. So this action is you can either build or repair, and it's normal technical engineering, and basically for each success, increase the progress track of the camp or structure within it by 1 by discarding 1 of the appropriate resource for that structure's track. So I showed you the campfire kitchen, and it's got this progress track. These are going to be circles if I ever get an actual character sheet created. And in the circle, I wrote down what the resource is according to the structure. So it's stone, W's wood, M is metal, and PA is parts. So if I was creating this one from scratch, I'd roll a build structure and roll however many successes I roll. If I roll all 4, I can complete it in one go. But if, say, I only roll 1 or 2 successes, I just start by filling in the first one being stone. I discard a stone. I now have filled in the first split. And then once you've created the structure all the way to the end of the progress track, you then get to use it. Then if the structure gets damaged to halfway or more, you can no longer use that structure until you repair it by spending the resource and taking the action. So that's resources, or that's the build repair camp. And it works the same for the camp. You take that action and you spend the wood, the skin, the stone, the ore, the salvage, so on. That's how that works. All right, then there's the work action. This is just, it's all as per structure. You choose a structure in the camp or a friendly outpost. That's another thing with outposts. They can have structures. They'll probably start with a random one, and you can build them in friendly ones and use them. You can use those structures as long as the outpost is friendly. Then we got the travel skill. This is as per hex, so every hex has its own travel modifiers and number of hours it's going to take. And this one's a protagonist only, because you're moving the whole camp at that point to the new hex. So you have to be there. So that one's protagonist only, and the hours are determined by the current hex, not the destination hex. So whatever hex you're in, the hex you're going, that's the amount of hours you spend to get to the next hex over. Whether you know what's in that hex or not, it doesn't matter. And then you simply move into it. And then basically the skill test is for each success you refunded an hour. You got there quicker. There's the Scouts campaign action. This one is for each success you can generate the adjacent hex, which is kind of nice to know where you're moving to. These hours I might change. They're a little bit too much. But for each success you get to, you can skip around the map that way. So say I'm at this home map and I roll 3 successes, I can either generate the 3 adjacent hexes to my hex, or I can go out. I can go 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? I can kind of chain them with the scout action. Then there's the explore action. This is the big one. This is for every success you roll once on the exploration table. Let's take a quick look at the exploration table. This is how you find locations in hexes. Is it this one? Nope. It's not that one. Let me find the table real quick. Yep. What did I do with the exploration tables? There it is. Alright. Ignore this front page. That's already been done. Alright, so you roll on the exploration table, and half the time you're going to roll a new location. And then the other half of the time, this is where you're going to get some interesting events occur. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's a choice. For instance, if you got 53, you'd have an easy social morality test, and you're allowed to remove 1 burden from your camp and you gain a woe, or you can discard 5 coins and gain 1 camp follower per success. So I haven't written out the narrative for that, but in my mind it's you can secretly kill a burden of your camp. Like whoever, the old guy who can't help anymore, you secretly kill him. You gain the woe because it hurts your feeling. It hurts to kill somebody. You don't want to just kill a random dude, but it's survival. Or instead of that, you can discard 5 coins and gain a camp follower instead. So there's a bunch of different ones. I won't go through them all. I haven't written the narrative for each of those yet either. but some are good, some are bad, some are neutral. And then a very few of them don't have an associated role. They just happen. Like this is where you can get a henchman. You promote a camp follower to a henchman. Oh, I also need to come up with a system for that. I'll get that's on my list of things to do or things to explore. I won't get into that in this video, but. And then here's your new location table. Every time you roll on the location table, you subtract 10 from the roll for, well, that should be add 10. That should not be minus 10, it should be add 10. So you add 10 to the roll for each pre-existing location, and then eventually you'll roll hex fully explored, and you'll mark that on the map, and you can no longer find locations at that hex. And then all of the cities and stuff are early, because you should know generally what cities are around. And then the outposts are also early. You have neutral and hostile outposts. So 30 and lower will give you either a settlement or a outpost. And then by adding 10 to because of every existing location, as you find things, it'll make it less and less likely you'll find those. So, and then more likely you'll hit the hex fully explored. So, all right. That's the encounter table. That's the exploration table. The encounter table is going to be similar, but instead of a new location for 1 through 50, it's going to be the attack I was talking about. You'll have to immediately initiate a battle on the tabletop. And then it'll have its own list of events that occur. Did I do 50? Yeah. Right now, I think I might just use, if an event occurs, I might just use this existing list here, but we'll see. Anyways, that is the exploration table. That is the exploration campaign action. We've got the patrol campaign action. For each full 3 successes, you can decrease Calamity by 1. This is one of the ways you can decrease. Mostly Calamity just ticks upwards, but you can do Patrol to decrease it. Patrol is going to have probably a higher chance of an encounter, though, than at 35%. It'll be more than that. But it's one way to decrease Calamity. Then you got Craft Repair. For this particular action, for every success, you can spend the scrap value of any item to remove the damage status from it. So if your equipment gets damaged, you can fix it. Or you can spend double the scrap value of any simple item to create it. So an item will have a stat on it that'll call it simple or not. And you can just craft simple items. You don't need any special things. But you can also build structures that'll allow you to build more complex items. So say you build anvil and forge or whatever. You can then craft, for instance, a sword. You wouldn't be able to craft a sword normal because it's not simple. But if you have that structure, you can take the craft skill and then forge a sword. So that is that action. You can also use it to restore hit points and armor. So we'll get into combat stuff on the second video. But basically, armor can get damaged during missions, and this is the campaign action you take in order to repair it. All right, here's the magic section. So there's 2 types of magic. There's rituals and prayers. Here's how the magic system works. It's campaign action. You spend, if hours say variable, you can spend as many as you'd like. And then usually you only get to roll a maximum number of dice equal to the number of hours spent. So say you only spend an hour performing the ritual, and you have enough attribute and skill to roll 4 dice, you'd only get to roll a 1. You would have to spend 4 hours of the ritual in order to roll all the dice. But the way rituals work is just like when you're crafting a structure. Where are they? Yeah, rituals will have a progress track, just like a structure, just like structures do. So, for instance, this ritual is Divine the Portents. It's 4, so you have to get 4 eventually get 4 successes. You don't have to do the ritual all in one go. You can break it up over the campaign turns. There'll be a sacrifice involved with the ritual once you reach the final pip on the track. You have to do the sacrifice. It could be any number of things, from sacrificing population to discarding items, gaining camp fatigue, taking woes, all kinds of sacrifices. Then there's an associated skill check, and then there's whatever the effect is. So for Divine Importance, you'd need to do 4 successes on the Perform Ritual. The sacrifice is none, so if you ever reach the 4th step, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And then the effect is you gain 1 camp luck, so you get to get that free reroll at some point. Whenever you pay a sacrifice cost of a ritual, including none, you have to reduce the strength of a prayer with the highest strength to 0. This kind of is like the church looks down upon witchcraft and sorcery. So if you ever use rituals, any of your prayer strengths will get reduced to 0 because you're using them. Now, the way prayers work are, every prayer has a strength. You can roll it as a campaign action, and I'm probably going to change that from hard to normal. I haven't decided yet. And then you choose any number of hours, just like the ritual, and for every success you increase the prayer strength by 1 of any known prayers, because you only start with 1 known and you have to find the rest. And rituals you can only perform if you have the ritual tome in your cache or in your possession. But the prayer strength is the percentage chance that you get to use the prayer. So you build this prayer strength, you pray throughout the campaign, building up any of your known prayers. And then whatever the strength of the prayer is, you roll a D100. So say you've prayed over the last week. You've built up the Divine Healing prayer. You've built that up to 30 or 40%. At any point during a mission or during a campaign, doesn't matter when, you can try and trigger the prayer. You roll the percentiles. If you get the prayer strength or lower, you get to do the effect. If you fail, the prayer goes to 0. And that's it. So these effects aren't like magic in a typical RPG. You're not like throwing lightning bolts around. But like you are doing things like some of them are pretty good. Some of them are going to be less good. Like clairvoyance, you can generate any unknown hex on your map. You can generate it all. And I think it also allows you to generate locations in that hex too. So there's Align the Stars. This one's a fun one. It's got a 20 track, so you have to get 20 successes. And you have to sacrifice a d6 of your population and or burden. And increase the camp stress by the same amount. And then you get to immediately trigger a Calamity. Why you would ever want to do that, I don't know. But it was a pretty cool idea that you can actually do. You can actually perform an end of the world ritual and call upon the Calamity. So that was fun. Then there's the Call the Mist ritual, and that one is you can basically teleport your camp. You just pick another hex you know of. I've got the Bind a Demon. So you can summon a demon and bind it, and it's going to be an item you can put in your cache and bring it with you on an adventure and release the demon, basically. You can do the same thing with the Raise the Dead. I got a dog barking in the background here. Alright, so that's how rituals work. That's how prayers work. Some of the prayers are Divine Healing. You get to cure all wounds and injury statuses. There's Feed the Masses. You can reduce your camp hunger to 0. There's Smite the Unbeliever. You just choose any one model on the table and remove it. So that's how prayers work. Alright, then there's the Inspire. The Inspire campaign action. This one is for every 3 successes, you can increase camp morale or decrease camp stress. you're basically inspiring your population if they're not doing so good. There's the tend action. This is your healing action. You can only take it once per turn, and for each success you get, that's how you reduce injury or disease status, and it's also how you restore health. Health won't just regenerate. Well, actually, it does. On every week, it'll restore 1. But this is how you regenerate it. And then there's the train action. So if you have experience points, this is how you spend it. And then you can spend successes. There's 2 ways to spend successes. You can spend 1 success to choose one of the choices on the training chart and spend the XP for it. Or you can spend 3 successes and you can choose one of the options on the training chart and reduce the cost by 1 XP. So if you roll really well for your training, it'll actually cost you less XP to increase whatever you're trying to increase. Then there's the adventure. The adventure campaign action. This is the one where you choose the location and a hex you're in and you do the tabletop battle. This is going to be the primary way you gain resources. I'm going to make it balanced so you can't gain enough resources generally to survive unless you're really lucky or you're really skilled. You won't be able to just survive from hunting and fishing and logging, and you'll be able to keep up any kind of sizable population. You're going to have to do adventures. Hold on 1 minute here. All right, that's that the wife was coming in. All right. Then there's the rest campaign action. This is how you recover wounds and woes. So if you take wounds and woes, you do a rest action, and for each success, you can reduce wounds and woes for any character that has them. Then there's the retire action. This is what you take at the end of a campaign turn, regardless of how many hours you have left. It costs 0 hours to take it. And then basically it's whatever hours you would have normally remaining. When you take the retire action, that'll determine how much camp fatigue you gain. So if you save between 7 and 8 hours of your hours that you get the 24 hours in a day, you save 7 or 8 of them. When you take the retire action, you suffer no camp fatigue. But if you only have 4 or 5, you might suffer 1, or 2 or 3, you suffer 2. So on and so forth. So that's basically the turning in for the night. Then there's the settle in action. This is the action you can take to fast forward time. I haven't decided if this is sticking around or not, or how it's going to work exactly. But the idea is you will get a slight discount on upkeep by taking the settle in action. And it'll allow you to fast forward the clock, especially if there's a story mission. So you have a Calamity story. One of the chapters might say survive for a week at such and such a place. This would be a good way to get that week done quickly. You don't have to actually play out all 7 days. You can do settle in as long as you have enough resources built up to do it. Then there's the dictate action. This is for protagonists only. Basically, for each success, you get to return one of the dice from the dice pool. You basically are dictating that the follower, the henchman, has to do more work. Then there's the research skill. This is how you gain points of interest. There might be other uses for the research skill. I haven't fully developed it yet, but... And those are all of the campaign actions. So you can do quite a bit moving around the map with these actions, and then you've got the resting actions and the adventure actions, that kind of stuff. So for now, that's it. There might be more actions that I need either create as I create other parts of the game, or actions I can take out that don't make any sense or are too weak or whatever. But for now, that's our list of actions. I think there's either 30. I think there might be 30. So you can basically do anything you can do in a role-playing game with this list of actions. You can create outposts. You can do diplomacy. You can recruit people. You can craft items. You can build structures. You can travel and explore the map. You can find locations. You can do a lot with these actions. It's got a pretty free roam of this map. So that's the actions. And let's go ahead and I wanted to explain all the actions and how they work and what's available. So now we're returning to our first campaign turn. We have all 24 hours. We've got our dice pool available here. And like I said, we know that food's going to be difficult. So we're going to want to do some foraging, hunting, trapping, or fishing. I'm a trapper, so we're going to look at trapping. It will take twice as many hours to do a trapping task. So, and we're in arid grasslands. So let's look at that now. There's several of those actions I talked about are affected by what map hex you're in. So here's the travel. If you're in a depression, it takes 8 hours. If it's plains, it'll take 8 hours. Hills has a base of 12 hours. Mountains has a base of 16 hours. So if the hex you're in is any one of those geographies, that's the amount of hours you're spending to take the travel action. Then it is adjusted by other parts of the hex. So your water will adjust it. If you're in a lakes and rivers hex or swamps and marshes hex, traveling is going to cost 2 or 4 extra hours. If you're in a forest, it's going to cost you 2 extra hours. If a road is present, you actually get to subtract 2 hours. So looking at the map that we're at, we're here in this middle one. It's plains, arid, and grasslands. So we're going to keep that in mind. So if we wanted to leave that, and there's a road going through it, as long as you travel in the direction of the road, we're here. Say we go to this hex, that's the way the road goes, we'd get the benefits of the road. Or if we went down to this hex, we'd also get the benefits of the road. So if we wanted to travel out of here, it's plains and grasslands and arid, so there's no modifier, so we're at 8 hours. And then there's no forest, and then there's minus 2 hours for the road. So as of now, if we took a travel action, it would cost us 6 hours. We get to roll the skill test and see if we can save any hours. So that's how travel works. But right now we're looking at trapping and foraging. So for trapping, we can't trap here. Trapping will produce 0 food or skins. So there's no point in trapping here. Not enough water to support large animals. So we can't fish either. We could hunt because we're in plains, and hunting gets us 3 food. I should make it give you -1 here on arid. But nope. Alright, so we can hunt here to gain 3 food or skins if we're in a plains. And it's not barren, but it is grassland, so we get +1 food. So hunting here would be good. Now that doesn't make sense, does it? It's almost desert-like. Yet we're going to get 4 food for every success on a hunting check. I might want to add a negative modifier if the area is arid. I will. Absolutely will. I always think like African savanna, though. That's pretty dry and arid usually. But there is a plethora, and it's grasslands. But there is a plethora of wildlife. So yeah, maybe I'll leave it as is. I'm going to leave it as is. But either way, we're not trapping here, that's for sure. Hold on. Trapping. I didn't write down trapping. Look at that. There is no, because it's got the bonuses for these hexes. It's +1 food or skins if you're in streams. So we get no bonus in arid. but we can still trap. Let's base it off of not geography. We'll base it off of the vegetation. That makes more sense. So barren will be nothing. Scrublands will be 1 food or skin. And then 2 for grasslands and 3 for forest. That makes sense to me. Yep, okay. So we can trap here because it is grasslands. We get 2 food per success. Oh, I wrote that in fishing. Okay, I wrote that in fishing by accident. All right, and we just don't get any bonuses, so it might be better for us to do a hunting expedition. We'll get more food. Yeah, we'll get more food hunting. So let's go ahead and do that. So hunting will take double the hours because of the famine that's going on right now. So hunting, we've got our dice pool here. We've got our hours. Hunting takes 5 hours normally, so it's going to take us 10. So we'll reduce this down. That's what we got for hours left. And we will assign, we'll check what the successes are first. First thing we want to do is, we'll do it with our protagonist. We spent the hours, so our protagonist will be doing it. Hunting is a hard technical survival. We do have technical, so we're going to add 2 dice to our dice pool. We don't have survival, but does anybody down here have survival? Nobody. Nobody has the survival skill, which means I'm rolling 2 dice, and it's a hard check, which that might end up becoming a normal, but we'll leave it for hard for now. So out of 2 dices, I need at least a 6. I'm going to say I'm going to use 4 of the dice from my camp followers. The way this works is I would assign the die to the character I want to use. So we'll do 1 resourceful, 2 resourceful, the barter guy, and the charisma guy. So those 4 characters are going to be participating in this action. And once their die is spent, they can't add a die again unless you use the dictate test. Then you can remove the die. So me and these 4 fellas are going to go hunting. We already checked what a success gives us. I believe it's 4. Right? 4. Hunting in the plains, you get 3 food or skins. And then we get an additional 1 for grasslands. So now we roll. Every success will gain us 4 food, which is actually pretty good. But it will take us 10 hours. Oh, there's a big die. I gotta pull that out. I didn't roll that. That was already there. I can't get it out. There we go. Alright, we rolled a single success. Pretty good. I didn't expect any. So we gain 4 food according to the campaign action. I'm going to pull these off. I need a better way to track it, but those dice are spent. And we gain 4 food, which will put us at 14. And we have a mere 14 hours left in the day. So for the remainder of the day, we're going to spend the 6 hours I had mentioned that it would take to travel out of this hex. We'll spend those 6 hours, and we will travel out of the hex. So we're currently here. I kind of want to make it to this ruined town that's over here. So we're going to travel to this hex. This hex has a road, so it'll be 2 hours less. Plains takes 8 hours to travel. 8 minus 2, 6 hours. So we spent our 6 hours. We get to make a physical speed, hard physical speed test. You can add dice from the dice pool, but I want to save them to see what this next hex looks like first. Where's the travel? Let's trade. There's travel. So travel is a hard physical speed. Our character has physical of 1 and does not have the speed test, so I'm allowed to roll a single die. You're always allowed to roll at least 1 die anyways. So I get a 6. It'll actually only cost me 5 hours. I get refunded an hour. I did not get a 6, so it did cost us the 6 hours. We are now in the new hex. We will now generate the hex. The way generating a hex when you already have a hex, so we're moving from a hex, you will then, where's the hex generation? You'll use a different chart. So the first one we used was generating a hex with no adjacent hexes. But when you generate a hex with adjacent hexes, you have to roll on the from and to chart. Alright, so we are going from plains to, we roll. So roll on the plains chart right here. So we're going from plains. If there's an adjacent hill hex or adjacent mountain hex, you'd add 5 to this roll, but there are no adjacent mountain or hill hexes. So we just roll plains to plains. We rolled an 11, so that brings us to a depression. So this hex is depression, so it's like a big valley or a bowl-shaped depression. Now we move to the water. We are moving from arid, but the current geography is depression. So we're subtracting 10 from the roll, and there are no adjacent hills or mountains. And there are no adjacent rivers or swamps. So we're just subtracting 10 from this roll, and we're going from arid to 84, which is rivers and lakes. Good. That's good. Then we move to the vegetation. The new hex is rivers and lakes. We're going to add 10 to this roll. We are coming from grasslands. We rolled a 36, which brings us to grasslands again. And that's it. We've generated a new hex. If the road already exists in the hex, you don't roll to see if it goes in. We already know that the road's going that way. So we don't have to generate the road. And we are now in a new hex. And we have 8 hours left in our day. And for the last, we have an hour. We can use 1 hour. What we're going to do is, because if you rest for 7 hours, you don't get a penalty. We could do more and take a penalty. But the way fatigue works, I'll get into that when we do the upkeep. Alright, so for our last hour, we're going to use the work action and work our campfire kitchen. See if we can't make some extra food. There it is. So it costs hours as per structure. I think I was going to do it where it's a... Yeah, so... Like I said, this is a game I'm developing, so it all shouldn't make sense yet. there will be some hiccups, and this is one of them. I don't recall how I wanted work to work. So I think the hours is as the structure, so I believe it's going to be like the other variable ones where you can choose a number of hours to spend doing the campfire kitchen, and that's the maximum number of dice you get to roll. I think that's how I wanted to do it. That is how I wanted to do it. That way, if workers do it, they well, that would make it so workers wouldn't get the benefit of their skill. Well, for now, we're going to make it so it's variable. Right now, taking a work action is a variable hour. So we're going to spend 1 hour. Our protagonist is going to do the campfire cooking. He'll have at least 1 dice, so I don't even need to check it. And the way the campfire kitchen works is, let's pull out the structures part. If I can find it. Structures, here we go. Alright, so we have the only structure we have is campfire kitchen. We're going to spend 1 hour to do it. We're going to roll to see how many successes we get. It's an easy intellectual creativity, so we're going to get 1 dice no matter what we do. But on a 4-up, it's a success. We rolled a 3, so it doesn't matter. So we failed it. But let's just look at it anyways, just so you can see how the structures are going to be set up. Campfire kitchen. So here's the active effect. Roll a skill test we just did. For each success, you may discard 2 food to gain 3 food. You're basically stretching your food out. Oh, and there's a 10% encounter chance. Oh, there was an encounter chance on the travel as well. And maybe on the hunt. Yeah, we did a couple actions here. Hold on. We got to roll encounters for them. Alright, hunt had a 5% chance for an encounter. No encounter. Then we did a travel check. Travel has a 15% chance, so we gotta roll that. No encounter. Good, I don't want an encounter. I want to get to the upkeep. If there is an encounter, I'm probably just gonna say no, just for demonstration purposes. And then we took a work action, and the encounter for this particular campfire kitchen is 10%. Oh, it's a 6. I tried to tap it into a 4. But we're going to say just for now that it was that 4. Or a 66. There you go. So there's no encounter. I just wanted to roll it just to show it. We had 7 hours left. We still have 5 dice in our dice pool, so we can take some actions that aren't going to be involving our protagonist. So there is 1 action. We are in, what's our hex now? So our current hex is grasslands, rivers, depression. We need more wood for upkeep. So let's go ahead and check the logging action. Better to do it in a forest, but we're not in a forest. And we need wood, so... Alright, logging action. So we're not going to worry about the hours, because it's only going to be dice from the dice pool. It is a normal physical endurance, and at least one of these camp followers has endurance, so we'll benefit from the endurance skill. And for each success, you gain wood according to the hex type. It is a normal skill, so we get all 5 dice from the 5 remaining people in the camp that haven't taken an action. We also have the endurance skill. We're going to add 2. We get to roll 7 dice for this test. You can also hunt, though. No, we're going to do it this way. So let's look at the chart for the hex resources. So we are currently in what was it? Plains. No, depression, rivers, grasslands. All right. So logging in the grasslands gets you 2 wood. Rivers and lakes will make that up to 3 wood. And that doesn't matter. So we're going to get 3 wood per success. And we're rolling a lot of dice. So this should get us set for wood for a while. Alright, and our results are... This is every 5 plus is a success. So we got 3 successes. That'll get us 9 wood. Puts us at 16. Okay, 16 wood. Good. We have spent all of the dice pool. We have spent almost all of our hours. We've got 7 left. So we're going to take the final action of that is the retire action. No test, no hours, no encounter. Oh, there was a 5% chance, but we're not going to, even if it happens, we're not doing it. And we end the campaign turn and proceed to Upkeep Phase. That is the whole of the action. Alright, but there was... Let's check for Calamity, too. I think we did what? We did a hunt. Hunt will add 1 Calamity. We did a travel. Travel adds none. We did a work. Where's work? Forge. Work adds none, because the campfire kitchen adds none. We did a logging. Logging adds none. And I think that was it, yeah? Yeah, that's it. Alright, so now we do retire. So, that completes our first campaign turn. We will proceed to the Upkeep Phase. Next turn, I'm going to search for a location in this hex, and regardless, I'm going to make sure there's at least one for demonstration purposes. We proceed to the Upkeep. Here are the phases of Upkeep. You start with resource consumption. That's the first thing we're going to do. So you're going to spend 1 food and 1 wood per population. Right now we're at population 10. So we're spending 10 of each. We check our food and our wood. We've got 14 and 16. So now we're down to 4 and 6. There was another... I should have gotten 1 less food per success. Because of the famine. Yes, yes, yes. I had 10. I got 4. What did I get? 2 successes? I got 1 success. Right? I'm pretty sure I got 1 success. So I have 1 less food than I have. Let me check it. We were in plains. Yeah, 3 and 1. So yeah, we got 1 less. So we're actually at 3 food. That was my mistake. But I caught it. I mean, I wrote the game, but still. Alright, so we fully managed to meet our consumption requirements. For each missing food, you increase hunger by 1, and for each missing wood, you increase exposure by 2. That's where clothing comes into play. You get those good sturdy clothing. For each one of those you have, you reduce it by 1 less. And then players may spend additional food and wood beyond the upkeep to reduce hunger and exposure by 1 and 1. And if you do both hunger and exposure at 0, each additional food and wood pair that you spend can reduce stress. And that's how you reduce stress. Alright, so that's resource consumption. Then we've got disease. Nobody has a disease, but the way it would work is you would get a status of disease for characters, and you roll a number of d6s equal to their status. On a 1 or a 2, it increases by 1, and on a 6, it decreases by 1. And once disease hits your health, whatever it happens to be, that character dies. But if you have the disease camp stat, like, because disease can spread amongst your community, you would just simply mark it there, up or down. Then you do a stress test in a similar fashion. but on a 1 it increases, and on a 6 it decreases for each point of stress you already have. Then you go to population loss. So the way this works is you determine the highest value of those camp statuses up here. You pick whichever one's got the highest value, compare it to the population number. If the highest value exceeds your population, you subtract the difference in population. So your people either were too hungry, they either fled or starved to death. They froze to death from exposure, whatever. That's where the attrition comes from. And then you remove population equal to the loss. You get to pick and choose who goes. And then you adjust all affected stats by the number of population loss. So all of your stats will be affected by the number of population loss. So no matter what, you're always going to, all the other ones are now going to be lower because you're going to subtract 1 from all those stats for each character that left. And then check it, you should be good. So that's the way that works. So to reiterate, say you had hunger 11 and all other stats were at 10. And we have a population of 10. So we'd have the highest stat would be hunger, being 11. So we would subtract 11 by the population, which is 10. So we're left with a value of 1. That's how many people leave. That's how far over the population the hunger went. You then will remove the 1 population. You get to pick which character dies. You can do anybody. You can do yourself. You can do the protagonist if you want. But I don't see why you would. Then you reduce all of these stats by 1. And hunger was at... Oh, that doesn't work. No, that does work. So hunger was at 11. And the rest were at 10. Hunger now becomes 10, and the rest are at 9. And that's it. Then you move on. You only pick the highest status and then compare that number to the population. And then you reduce all of that. Now there you go. There's a little, it's got an easy workaround. So the way originally it was supposed to work is it would reduce and then you'd be fine. So remove population equal to the loss, then adjust any affected stats. Hunger, exposure, disease that still exceed the population to match the new population. There you go. I did write that in. So now hunger was at 10 and the rest were at 9, but I now reduce all stats to at least the population. That's how that works. So then hunger would be reduced to 9 and no longer be over. All right, good. There we go. We got it. There's the burden adjustment. You got to add burden to your population for purposes of hunger and exposure. Just explain there that burden can occur from some injuries. Then there's resolve fatigue. So you just simply look at the chart. However many hours you had left, we had 7. There's no change in fatigue. Our fatigue 0 doesn't change. If we had 5 or 6 hours left, we'd gain a fatigue. And if we had 3 or 4, we'd gain 2. If we had 1 or 2, we'd gain 3. And if we had 0 or less, we'd gain 4. And the way fatigue works is every point of fatigue is 1 less dice in your dice pool. So if we have a dice pool of 9 dice. We had 3 henchmen and 6 camp followers. So if we had a fatigue of 9, we wouldn't get any dice in our dice pool until we basically slept. You can get, if you sleep 14 or more hours, you get to remove 2 fatigue, and if you sleep 9 to 13 hours, you get to remove 1. So that's how the fatigue system works. Alright, so that's it. We've completed our upkeep. We paid off all of our consumption necessities. We didn't have any other... We don't have any diseases or anything. Right now we're doing the famine one. We managed to feed ourselves, so... I'm tired, too. So that's going to end campaign turn 1. So that's it. That's basically how you play the game. I think I've explained pretty much all the parts I have done. I didn't get into the way I did get into the way items work. They're gonna provide bonuses to some campaign actions, like, well, you can find wood axes that'll let you cut wood, or sorry, those tandem two-person saws. You can find those. You can build them. You can find like general toolkits that just give you a bonus to crafting checks. You can find a sledgehammer will give you bonuses to quarrying. You can collect more rocks. There's a handcart item that'll allow you to carry more stuff while you're on missions. So there's a lot of items that are going to give you bonuses to basically all those mechanics I described. That was an extremely long video. I really need to bookmark it so that way people can look at it and we'll get a better idea of how to play. It'll be probably easier for me to create a document, but this video was basically just for me to show off the progress of the game. I basically have the campaign system sorted out. There's not much more tweaking to do to the actual function of the campaign system. And I like it. I think it's pretty good. I think it's you got your band of survivors, you're moving around a map, exploring, spending resources and surviving. There's the encounter chance. You're dodging encounters. If you come up with an encounter, you're going to get a whole list of things that'll happen. I need to come up with narrative explanations for all those too. Right now they're just mechanical, but I need to add the narrative to give it that apocalypse flavor. So far, none of this has an apocalypse flavor, other than the fact that I guess that wasting Calamity kind of puts the pressure on, knowing that it costs me way more food, or it takes way more time to gather food, and I'm gathering less of it, and I'm already down. I'm already against the wall. I have 3 food left, I think. This particular group of fellas has 3 food left. Yeah, we got 3 food left. We still need extra wood so we don't freeze at night. So that was turn 1. Turn 2, we're going to take the explore action in this hex that we're in, because we're currently in hex number, where are we, 45? Write down 45 for our location. Currently in 45. So we're in that hex number 45. It's not a terrible hex. It's got rivers and grasslands. Those are both good. We're gonna do the explore action here. Even if I fail it, I'm gonna generate at least 1 location so I can do the adventure phase. That'll be next video. So this is already 3 hours. I'll have to timestamp it maybe. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. All right. I don't think I'm going to go over right now how combat works. I'll go over a basic, quick rundown of how actual fighting in the game is going to work. Or a mission phase, I should call it, whatever I call it. Adventure phase. Let's just go through a quick rundown of that. So here's the order so far. This might be subject to change. So you determine the mission type. You pick it when you explore a location from the available missions in that location. You set up terrain based on not predefined maps, but terrain tables. You then, once you've set up your terrain, you'll deploy models. Then you'll deploy any enemy models or enemy hidden markers. Then the way it works is you generate AP. That's your currency for taking actions in the mission. And then you do alternating model activation. So the player will activate a model, perform the actions. Then the AI will activate a model, perform actions, and you just keep doing that. There's reaction actions. So if a model takes an action, you can take a reaction action based on it. So like for instance, someone swings a sword at you, you can take a reaction to swing back immediately out of turn, basically. Here's all the actions and the associated AP costs. I'm going to call it IP, initiative points. Interact is anything where you like anything to engage with any special mission rules or exchange items and stuff. Move is you just move your movement stat. Oh, something to note for action points. So you get 2 actions. You can take 2 of these actions when you're moving your guy around. You pay the AP cost to take the action. And then that's it. But if you only take 1 action, you get the focus bonus, which means instead of taking a second action, you get the bonus of just taking only that 1 action. So for instance, the interact actions focus is you get an additional die to your dice pool. The move action is you get to move half your movement rounded up. And the reason there's the focus bonus is because if you take 2 of the same action as part of the same activation, the second one's going to cost 1 more AP than the normal cost. So if I took 2 move actions, it would cost 1 AP. But if I just take a focused move, I would get my 6 inches plus the half 9. But spending that extra AP would essentially net me another 3 inches. So that's how that works. You can just take 1 action instead of 2 and get the focus bonus. Or you can take 2 actions and not get the focus bonus. And if you take 2 of the same action, you increase the AP cost. And any action that says reaction, you can do as part of being attacked. Only as part of being attacked. So you can't reaction action to another character's move, just if that particular character attacks you. And basically the 2 attack actions are aimed attack and wild attack. And aimed attacks obviously are easier to hit. Wild attacks are harder to hit, but cost less AP. So usually if you don't want, you only get 1 AP per turn. It builds up, so if you don't spend your AP during the mission in a particular round, it will stay. In the next round, you'll have 2, for instance. There's probably going to be other things, items that might add AP. There might be skill masteries that'll allow additional AP generation. I haven't really played around with it too much, but I like the concept. And then so these are all the actions. You can clearly see anything that says reaction you can do as part of being attacked. Then there's attack rolls, or just like any other skill check. You check the attack action, so it's going to be a hard attack roll with the martial or marksmanship. It's actually changed that to the specific weapon will have its own stat associated with it. They're mostly going to be marksman and martial, but some weapons, like I think the bludgeon, uses strength instead as the skill. Defense rolls are always either physical evasion if targeted by melee, or emotional instinct if targeted by range. So defense rolls are always the same. Attack rolls are going to be as per the particular weapon. If you are damaged, you make. So if you're ever reduced to, it should say wounds, not health. That should say wounds. If your wounds are ever reduced to 0 or lower as part of an attack against you, or just any way you lose wounds, you'll roll on the injury chart, and it's a D10. You add your remaining wounds, so if wounds are negatives, you're going to subtract it, and then certain armor bonuses will apply to injury rolls. And then you simply roll and you check it. Stunned means you get -2 to all dice until you remove it. Then there's knocked down. That means your model falls over and it takes its whole turn to stand up. Then there's bleeding. Bleeding tokens work kind of like the disease during regular upkeep. So for every bleed token a model has, you roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, you add another bleed token. And on a 6, you remove a bleed token. So you can possibly stop bleeding normally, but chances are you won't. Someone will have to tend that wound. You can tend your own wounds as part of the first aid action. And then there's incapacitated. That's you are down and out for the count, and you can't stand up on your own. You need a first aid action from another character to actually let you come back. Then lower results, you're getting casualty. That means you're removed from the board, and at the end of the mission, you're going to be rolling on the physical injury table. There's dead, and all friendly models that are within 3 inches of you, of the model that died, will take a woe. And then there's, if you get a 0 or less, that's a gory death. So whatever did the wounds did a particularly gory death. And not only do friends get the woe loss, but also foes. So that's the body explodes or whatever, gets cut in half or whatever happens to kill you off. It was gory. All right, so this is no longer part of this. This is moved into the upkeep, so we don't have to worry about that. One of the things you can do is sneak, and I think I described it better elsewhere, so we're going to ignore that for now. Basically, you can't draw a line of sight to the model unless you're within 4 inches or so. It might be 6 now, I don't remember. So that's that. Stunned, it's just reduced dice pool by 2 for all skill checks while you're stunned. And it stacks, so if you get stunned once, you're at stun 1. If you get stunned 3 times in the same turn, you're at stun 3. And you only remove 1 stun per mission round upkeep. Yeah, here's bleeding. Oh, if bleeding ever equals the current health of the model, that model dies. So basically, any of your models ever reach 6 bleeding, they die. Oh, I was also considering making camp followers have 3 health instead of 6. And most enemies. I might have to do a health stat for enemies. Enemies, oh yeah, so the way it works, I solved that here. So you roll for bleeding for enemy models just the same you would for player models, but instead of gaining bleed, instead they take 1 wound for each bleed and then add a bleed. So they bleed, but they suffer wounds. And once enemies hit 0 wounds, they're just, and they're not just out, they have to roll in the injury table. Yeah. Alright, so incapacitated I already discussed. Some item special rules and armor mechanics. We'll talk about armor mechanics real quick. So pieces of armor will have these stats, these 4 stats. They'll have an armor bonus. That gives you a number of additional d6s when you make your defense roll. They'll have a protection bonus. That's the bonus you get to your injury roll. It shows the armor actually stopping you from taking injuries. Then there's a hit point barrier symbol. So the way hit points barriers works is you can absorb wounds up to the barrier value, and then past that, wounds go to the model. So no matter what, you can only absorb wounds equal to the barrier value, and then additional wounds will pass through the barrier and still hurt your model. And the wounds that are absorbed by the barrier are reduced. Those are how many you reduce the hit points by. And once hit points equals 0, the armor no longer provides any of the protections here. And you can repair armor later. And armor has some keywords. They have like heavy and large and stuff. We'll get into that later. That's not important now. Alright, how to combat AP rule. A model may act without enough AP. Each missing AP equals 1 stun inflicted. I might adjust that to you can't use that rule if you are stunned, because otherwise you could just, because you'll get a -2 bonus, but you can get additional bonuses by taking the better of the act. Like aimed attack is costs an AP but is better than wild attack by a lot. But anyway, so I'm still playing around with that. We'll tweak that as we play the mission. First aid is just a technical plus apothecary roll, and you spend successes. So you do take your first aid check, and you spend your successes. So you can remove a bleed for each success. You can remove a stun for each success. You can remove the knocked down status. You can basically help the model up. And then for 3 successes, you can remove the incapacitated. And that's how you basically, models that get incapacitated, that's the only way they're coming back. And then morale check. I haven't figured out when I want morale to trigger. I was considering, because I want morale to be able to trigger for the enemy too. But the enemy, I was going to base it off of number of models you bring. but the enemy can have reinforcements arrive in the middle of a game, and sometimes those reinforcements aren't even the same type of enemy. So I haven't quite figured out how I want morale. Right now I'm going to go with, if you lose two, we'll say you lose 2 models in a single round, check morale. Maybe. We'll see if that... See, that doesn't really work either. I like the Mordheim where you lose 25% and that's when you check. That might be what it is. And I guess if the enemy models show up on the board, they'll just add to the overall total and determine whether 25% is met based on the new total. All right, that's how we're going to do it. So check at 25% loss. Reinforcements. I don't know how to spell it. Reinforcements. The new total. There we go. That works for now. All right, so you check at 25%, and then if enemies get reinforcements, their 25% will shift now. It's based off of total models that are on the board. I think that's good. Oh, and then when you fail the morale... So the way the morale check works, I didn't explain it. I think it's going to be an easy. It's always an easy. So you just roll a number of dice equal to the number of remaining models on the board, and 4 pluses, that model stays. Any other time, the model flees. You don't roll for each individual model. You just roll. You have 6 guys on the board. You just roll 6 dice. Count the number of 4s. Those people stay. And then whatever failures, you get to pick and choose which model runs away. And there are some caveats to that. So incapacitated models will never flee. And enemies flee starting with the furthest from the player. But you've got to make sure to resolve bleeding at the end of the mission. So at the end of the mission, after you've determined whether you won or lost, how many resources you've gathered, all that stuff, you'll resolve injuries and bleeding and stuff at the end of the mission. There's a whole post-mission section. Fleeing models suffer woe. That's one way to gain more woe. And then there's just the attack modifiers for cover and stuff. This is fairly normal. Falling and jumping. Swimming. Drowning. Alright, that's good enough. I'm pretty tapped out at this point. I went over pretty much everything. And we have... Oh, I just want to go over real quick some of the enemies you will encounter. Here we go. I've only got, I think, 7 tables figured out. So we talked about Wretched Humanity. That's what's in my... that's what's in both of those locations that we found. But these are the Wretched Humanity. You got the Meek. So I haven't fully developed rules yet for these. I got a few of them written up, but right now it's... These ones are non-aggressive, so you place them on the board, but if you go near them, you could possibly take woes because you feel bad for them. And they just kind of wander around. And if you provoke them, then they'll attack back, but otherwise they just wander. And there's Lost Sheep. Oh, and the Meek are also in groups. They deploy as like units, and they'll move as a unit. So it's like a big, massive... pathetic looking people. No, wait, no, those are single. Yeah, the Meek are single. Lost Sheep, they just kind of wander around. You ever see the war movies when a civilian town's bombed and they just kind of walk around, not knowing what's going on? That's the Lost Sheep. They move erratically, so they randomly move, and that's it. And if they contact you, they'll fight you, basically. But they won't fight you just from line of sight. Here's the wretched host. These are the cripples, the dying, the bleeding. They're not much of a threat, but when you do have to fight them, they could suffer woes from killing them because you feel bad. Then there's the starving masses. This is the one that comes in groups. So instead of deploying as single models, you'll deploy them as a mass of 4 or 5 or even 6. I haven't figured out exactly. And they'll move together in a squad and they'll attack things as a mass. And these are the starving masses. There's desperate cannibals. These aren't like cannibals that are flaunting it and loving it. These are the people that like they're gonna die if they don't eat, so they've resorted to cannibalism. And so if you have a casualty and it's left behind, that's one of the results is you got left behind on the battlefield. You don't come back. There's no way to come back. The desperate cannibals eat you. And then the last one on Wretched Humanity is the leper colony, and they're gonna have a special disease effect that will give you like a wasting leprosy. And I'll go over one more list. Well, I won't go over the whole list, but I'll just tell you what. So this list has got thieves and cutthroats. That's another type of occupant or enemy. There's the renegades and the mercenaries. These are like the militia and the soldiers and stuff. Disgraced knights. The hardened survivors, they work a little bit differently. When you encounter, for instance, renegades and mercenaries, you roll a d6, and that's what you encounter. And all of the models that from that encounter are going to be, for instance, the warlord's men, or the king's men, or the soldiers of fortune, whatever. But with hardened survivors, these are like the other group of survivors. So you're a survivor, and then they're a survivor. So you roll a d6 to see how many, and then you just roll that many times on the hardened survival table. So you could face woodsmen, hulking laborers, grizzled veterans, devilish rogues, wealthy nobles, and crazed hermits. Those are the other survivors. Then there's the religious authority. These are where you get your flagellants, your priest and his flock, inquisitors, crusading knights, templars, and prophets. Then there's the fanatical cults. Got doomsayers, flesh eaters, children of light. They're just fire worshippers. I need to come up with rules for fire too. You got your Satanists. Got your heralds of ancient things. These are like the Cthulhu cultists. And then you got false prophet, which is going to be kind of like a prophet, but false. And then this is the first one with the Calamity specific entries. These are plague victims. So when the Red Death comes, you've got the plague victims. These are the pleading hosts. So these are infected that don't attack you, but they try to touch you and give you disease. There's corpse bearers. So they're not necessarily aggressive either. I forget what I was going with that one. I think they were the corpse bearers that are now they're infected, obviously the plague victims. So they're led by a plague doctor, and they're pissed, and they'll try and get you. Whatever, I'll figure it out when I get to it. And we got, what do we got? Maddened, infected. These are people who've gone insane with the Red Death. They're at the point where they're going insane and just being violent. Got delusional soldiers. These are soldiers that were infected with the plague, but they refuse to accept it. And there's the resentful spreaders. They know they're doomed, and so should you be. And then there's immune spreaders. These are people who are immune to the disease, but can still pass it along. So they're probably the toughest, because the rest of them have been sick with the Red Death. All right, that's enough. Good. I've explained quite a lot. It's a 3-hour video. I'll have to timestamp it, or I don't know. I'll have to do something. This is too much. This is too long to ask people to watch, but I'll throw it up raw on YouTube for now. I don't really know how to edit. I'd have to learn it. I may or may not do it. I probably will eventually have to do it. But we'll see if anybody is interested in this game. Feedback is what I need. If for some crazy reason you decided to watch for 3 hours and 15 minutes or however long it's been, any feedback would be great if you watched at all. Or if you only watched some of it, feedback. I need feedback. This is the first game I've ever tried to actually write. I don't know if it's unique enough. I feel like it's a unique enough a game. Is it too complex? Is there too much to the game? Is there not enough? I can add more. I definitely have more to add. So yeah, just anything you can tell me would be fantastic. If this is on Twitch, you can write it in. I don't think you can write it anywhere on Twitch. But if you're here and you're from the Discords that I'm in, you can go ahead and tell me in the Discord what you think of it. If you watch this on the YouTube, because I'm going to post this on YouTube, you can tell me in the comments section what you think of the game. I'll do my best to. I'm going to put this one out raw, like I said. I might try to edit the other one down. Maybe cut out some of the playtime. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Anyways, that's it for now. I need to get some sleep. And I will be back. I don't think I'll be back tomorrow night. I want to refine some of those combat mechanics. And I also got to flesh out some of these, at least one of these enemy encounter tables with fully fleshed out. So I'm gonna say probably not tomorrow, but hopefully the next day I'll try and play campaign turn 2, and we can get into an actual tabletop battle and you can see the way it goes. So the idea, I'm gonna go over it real quick. So the idea is you set up all this terrain, which tells you as per the location, the mission will tell you what terrain you put out, and the resource level of the location will tell you that too. So you put out X amount of terrain. Each one of those terrain pieces has a, not this page, each one of those terrain pieces has a table to it. So a ruined building has a table for ransacking it. A dwelling has a table for ransacking it. A pile of corpses has a table for ransacking it. And you roll a ransack check just like you'd roll any other skill check, you know, difficulty, attribute, skill. And you check the table. If you get 0 successes, usually something bad happens. And if you get 1, 2, 3, or 4 successes, you check the table and see what you found. So that's where you're going to get a big bulk of your resources, is by going into these buildings during the mission and ransacking them. And then you also can use your POI resource to, you know, find treasure chests and crates and stuff. But that's it for now. We'll go over the actual mission phase when I do it. I'm done for now. But like I said, if you stuck around this long, please put comments. Anything you saw that didn't make sense, should be done differently, isn't fun, let me know that stuff. I'll take positive feedback too, but that's less valuable to me. Negative feedback is better. So anything you saw that it wasn't good or you thought could be better, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear. So, all right, well, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll be back within the next day or two.